Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting adventure. Today, Audio Novel presents, Marvel, So I'm a Supreme Being, So What, by Foolish Sociopath. And if you're looking for more amazing stories, don't forget to check out my Patreon page. Your support helps turn incredible tales like this one into fully immersive audiobooks. Join me on this journey, and together, we can bring more stories to life. Thank you for being part of the adventure. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Naiwa. Yua. My head hurts. I remember I was rereading volume 14 of Overlord before falling asleep and waking up over here, wherever here is. I can't see anything as it's dark. I can also hear some sort of rustling sound. Am I in a vegetative state? Although I love web novels, manga, anime, and their fanfics, realistically speaking I would prefer to believe I am in some sort of semi-aware coma, if that's a thing, rather than being reborn like a fiction protagonist. Bam, ouch. Did someone just bump into me? Hello. Pay attention to the injured, self-assumed, or critically ill, again self-assumed, patient. Maybe not. Maybe some pervert has kidnapped me and I'm in some sort of crate. Who am I kidding? I'm as normal as they come. Done nothing of significance or offended anyone. I also don't think I have anyone obsessed with me to yandere levels that they would need to kidnap me. I guess I'm just in denial to whatever is happening. Anyway, I should try to escape from here. I tried to apply whatever force I can muster and shove open whatever is binding me. Crack. Some part of this wall has fallen apart. Deep breath. One more time and, crack. Phew, I can finally breathe properly. Now to see where I am while I am not part of some organ trafficking operation. I crawl my way out to freedom and the sight that greets me is one that would cause arachnophobes to have a heart attack. Lots, and I mean lots, of spiders about the same size as me just squirming around everywhere. Was there some sort of apocalypse that caused insects such as spiders to mutate to the same size as a human? No, let's stop denying what has happened and try to accept things as they are. My fears are confirmed when I turn around to witness the egg I crawled out of. Yes, an egg. The rustles from the spiders provides a good background music and the leg of a spider that appears in my eyesight help to make this realization settle in quickly. I have become a spider. As soon as this realization strikes, a sound of munching draws my attention as I bear witness to one of my blood-related siblings happily chomp down on each other. It's decided. Let's first run somewhere far away from here before thinking about this situation calmly. As if to fuel my determination, a loud rhythmic vibration catches my attention. And lo and behold, the largest spider mankind would never have witnessed yet eating some hatchling spiders. That thing is multiple times my size. This whole situation reminds me of a series that I really liked called Kyumo Disugie, Nani Ka. It's all eerily similar. It's as if my whole situation is a copy-paste of Kyumo-chan. Let's follow the trend and call giant-ass spider as mother. Seriously though. Have I been reincarnated in So I Am a Spider So What? Is this another unknown world and all these similarities are just a bunch of coincidences? Or maybe I replaced Shiro. Chomp mother. You scared the living hell out of me. Damn, she is getting closer. I'll think about that crap later after escaping from this hellhole. I use every ounce of energy I have to move my newly born spider legs out of that room, dodging eggs as well as my brothers and sisters in my way. I also remembered what happened in the novel briefly, so I quickly bit one of the weaker injured spiders towards the end of the cave section to incapacitate it and tried to drag it with me. If nothing else, this spider will be my first meal in this new world. It is rather difficult as I was used to walking on two legs until I woke up here and I don't think I was a spider before my reincarnation like Shiro was. But difficult as it is, I made it out successfully. I crawled quite a distance away and mustered as much concentration as I could to assess my surroundings in this dark cave to try and achieve some semblance of safety before I started thinking again. Although I am not sure yet if this is the world of Kyumo Disugie Nani Ka, let's assume it is for now until it is confirmed to be otherwise. Komoko got the appraisal skill quite early, I think. Although she complained a lot that it was useless due to low level of skill, it is undoubtedly the most important skill as I would like to get information as early as possible. If I try to level it up from now, I might get information quickly. Not to mention it could help me analyze the skills of any other beasts that might be here. Here goes nothing, appraisal. I heard the cliché system voice I was expecting. Currently you have 100 skill points. The skill, Appraisal LV1, can be acquired by spending 100 skill points. Do you want to acquire it? I mentally said yes. Appraisal LV1 has been acquired. Remaining skill points 0. So am I in Kumo Disu Ga Nani Ka after all? Let's go with the flow until I meet some of the main cast. Now on to the elephant in the room, or in this case, the spider in the cave. I turned my eyes menacingly towards my poor spider sibling. It started shaking as if it knew its end was near. As much as I don't want to eat this spider, just the thought of it is gross. Survival is my first priority now. If my life is going to be remotely similar to Shiraori, then I have to throw away my previous ideas and thoughts as quickly as possible and embrace this new way of life to survive. With such a resolution, I quickly bit down the incapacitated spider with all my strength. Its attempts to break free dwindled until it met its definite end. I closed my eyes, tore of the chunk of the spider in my mouth and ate it as quickly as I could. Gross. It truly is gross. Shiraori did not lie. As I stifled my tears from the horrendous meal, the system notified me what I was waiting for. Conditions met. Title, Kin Eater, was acquired. By effects of the title, Kin Eater, skill, Taboo LV1, and Heretic Magic LV1 was acquired. Heretic Magic is truly overpowered later on. If I remembered correctly, it acts on the soul. I should try to find some place to rest. The thought of having to eat these sorts of critters every day from now on sent chills down my non-existent spine. Naiwa. Chapter 2, Arachne. Yahoo! I thought as I used teleportation to dodge Mother's attacks. Yes, it has been quite a while. I am now a Zana Horowa with its overpowered immortality skill. In fact, with my knowledge of the plot, I hesitated if I should kill Mother, as it would send Ariel crazy trying to destroy my ass, but I decided to do it anyway. Mother did have a hand in making it easier, as she did come at me with every intention to kill me after all. That brings me to another point to address. I'm most likely going to be a girl, aren't I? I was distraught when I first had the realization what feels like ages ago. I didn't mention I was a boy in my previous life. Well, I was. Anyway, I have just come to accept reality by now, as nothing seems to go my way anyway. So I just took the fact with the attitude of being thankful to live again, not to mention Shiraori is hella powerful. Also, even if I tried to copy the path Shiraori took, it would not be possible due to the butterfly effect. So I've been taking things in stride, doing what I want, keeping the most important parts the same. For instance, getting the pride skill was a no-brainer. But at the same time, I am a little more powerful than Shiraori was by the time she faced Mother, as I have been hunting more than she was. Maybe there is a discrepancy between the novel and reality, but this great elroe labyrinth is even larger than it was made out to be. There were also many more boss-level monsters that I had to face. As a result, I only need 5 more levels to meet the conditions for evolution into an Arachne, as I am LV45 now. By the time I kill Mother, I can become an Arachne. Hopefully. I have also, of course, made some preparations just in case Ariel comes and whoops my ass. I have a whole area in the labyrinth covered by eggs, using the egg-laying skill just in case I get killed. I don't want to mess up now due to being overconfident and not taking precautions. I will become a mother before I ever was able to become a father. It's a bittersweet moment. Also, the system seems to be slightly different in minor places. For instance, I was able to name myself Shiraori and it displayed so when I used appraisal. It will be ridiculous though if I somehow, due to some cosmic fluke, end up becoming a man instead of a girl and have to call myself Shiraori. That's the sad part, as I realized I could not change the name after I had already set it up to be so. And back to reality. I am only talking to you through the parallel mind skill while my main body is still fighting Mother. I have already destroyed the puppets and I have been running all around the cave section with my butthole on full power, spewing out spider webs to trap Mother. I was originally going to teleport Mother to the lava pool and then finish her off, but that did not work. And for the finishing touch, Abyss Magic LV10, just to be sure she would be gone. And the empty space where Mother stood earlier just speaks for itself, doesn't it? Well, and the system notification that I have leveled up and meet the condition to evolve. Author's note: I am glossing over the fight because I honestly don't remember a lot of Shiraori's skills and fighting style, as I had read the WN and LN long ago. So Imma reread it so I can describe future battles properly. I first teleport to the area where the Horonia have already started hatching and are happily moving towards me as if to recognize their mother. Ah, you guys are so cute. I conveyed my thoughts to them. A/N, not gonna lie, I wish the Horonia had more screen time. Their whole dynamic with Shiraori could have been explored much better. Seriously, my aesthetic sense and thought process has been skewed as I did not like insects before being reborn as a spider. It doesn't matter anymore either way. I mentally give them the command to keep watch around in case some beast or critter comes and give the A-OK for evolution into an Arachne as I let the darkness swallow me. My vision returns and signifies the completion of my evolution into an Arachne. Many skills have reached max level and of course my body size has increased. Looking down I can see the large lower body of a spider. As I am an Arachne, I have a human upper body which almost feels weird after such a long time. Even though the amount of time I have spent in my spider body is lesser than my human one, the sheer amount of things I have experienced since I have been reincarnated here as a spider is more than my lifetime as a human. Being completely honest, all I did was waste time as a human. I bend down to see my reflection in the spider eyes and I am greeted with the foreign face I am quite familiar with. Yep, it's confirmed now. I have definitely become Shiraori. I look exactly like her. Good thing I solved an identity crisis issues much earlier. Regardless, now to look at my stats. I say appraisal in a barely audible voice only to be greeted by Arachne LV1 skill points 0. Shiraori. Stats. HP 38,111. MP 44,024. SP 33,557. Offense 35,799. Defense 35,682. Magic 42,170. Resistance 42,068. Speed 41,063. Skills. HP Ultrafast Recovery LV8, Height of Occultism, SP Rapid Recover LV10, SP Minimized Consumption LV10, Celestial Power, Ultimate Life LV10, Ultimate Movement LV10, Fortune LV10, Fortitude LV10, Stronghold LV10, Skunda LV10, Magic Power Super Attack LV3, Energy Super Attack LV5, Deadly Poison Attack LV10. Enhanced Paralysis Attack LV10, Rot Attack LV7, Heretic Attack LV9, Destruction Super Enhancement LV7, Impact Super Enhancement LV8, Cutting Super Enhancement LV6, Piercing Super Enhancement LV7, Shock Super Enhancement LV7, Status Condition Super Enhancement LV10, Magic Divinity LV8, Magic Power Conferment LV10, Magic Conferment LV3, Battle Divinity LV10, Energy Conferment LV10, Ability Conferment LV7, Divine Dragon Power LV8, Dragon Barrier LV6, Poison Synthesis LV10, Medicine Synthesis LV10, Expel LV10, Divine Thread Weaving, Thread Control LV10, Psychokinesis LV9, Dimensional Maneuvering LV10, Iron Defense LV7, Panoptic Vision LV4, Kin Control LV10, Concentration LV10, Thought Super Acceleration LV6, Future Sight LV6, Parallel Minds LV10, High Speed Processing LV10, Heretic Magic LV10, Wind Magic LV10, Gale Magic LV8, Earth Magic LV10, Terrain Magic LV10, Seismic Magic LV1, Light Magic LV8, Holy Light Magic LV3, Shadow Magic LV10. Dark Magic LV10, Black Magic LV10, Poison Magic LV10, Healing Magic LV10, Miracle Magic LV10, Spatial Magic LV10, Dimensional Magic LV9, Abyss Magic LV10, Jinx Evil Eye LV9. Inert Evil Eye LV8, Sealing Evil Eye LV3, Anti-Magic Evil Eye LV2, Repellent Evil Eye LV7, Warped Evil Eye LV4, Annihilating Evil Eye LV6, Destruction Super Resistance LV6, Impact Nullification, Cutting Super Resistance LV6, Piercing Super Resistance LV6, Shock Super Resistance LV6, Flame Resistance LV9, Flood Resistance LV3. Gale Resistance LV8, Terrain Resistance LV9, Bolt Resistance LV3, Holy Light Resistance LV6, Black Resistance LV9, Heavy Super Resistance LV8, Status. Condition Nullification Acid Super Resistance LV8, Rot Super Resistance LV6, Faint Super Resistance LV1, Fear Super Resistance LV4, Shields Manship LV3, Thread Genius LV10, Hit LV10, Evasion LV10, Probability Supercorrection LV10, Throw LV10, Emperor Concealment LV2, Stealth LV10, Silence LV10, Odorless LV8, 5 Senses Super Enhancement LV10, Perception Expansion LV8, Immortality, Egg-laying LV10, Hades, Corruption, Conviction, Offer, Hero LV2, Great Demon Lord LV1. Charity, Perseverance, Pride, Rage LV3, Usurp LV4, Satiation LV10, Sloth, Wisdom, Divinity Expansion LV9, Taboo, and %I equals W. Titles: Foul Feeder, Kin Eater, Assassin, Monster Slayer, Poison Technique User, Thread User, Merciless, Monster Slaughterer, Ruler of Pride, Ruler of Perseverance, Ruler of Wisdom, WYRM Slayer, Fearbringer, Dragon Slayer, Ruler of Sloth, Monster Calamity, Champion, Human Slayer, Human Slaughterer, Rescuer, Medicinal Technique User, Saint, Savior, Ruler of Charity, Guardian, Human Calamity, Nightmare of the Labyrinth, Glitch. My status page is pretty much the same as Shiraori's with a few differences. The name of course as well as some titles. Although I have never left the labyrinth like Shiraori did, I did help score of soldiers who came to the labyrinth earning me titles of Saint, Rescuer etc., A/N. I don't remember the actual conditions and I can't be bothered to look them up to get those positive sounding titles, so this is just bullshit. Also, I just copied the status page from the wiki. What the players will see if they try to appraise Shiraori will be different. This status page will be converted to Yggdrasil format and be visible to them. There are also titles, Nightmare of the Labyrinth, and Glitch. I am also apparently called a nightmare, and this has also been certified by the system now. It is a passive which basically causes status ailments like fear to others who witness me. What's important is Glitch. When I try to appraise it, what comes out is you are a glitch in the system. You appear as a native to the natives and as a foreigner to the foreigners. I have no idea what that means. A/N. Basically just means that players will think of her as a player as well, while at the same time registering as a NPC and not enjoying any player benefits there might be, such as shops, gacha, her own system which is different from Yggdrasil system etc. Well, I'll think about it later, toodles. Chapter 3, Shiraori. A gigantic table carved of gleaming black stone sat in the center of the room, surrounded by 41 luxurious chairs. However, most of those seats were empty. Once, every single place had been filled, but now only 2 were occupied. One of the seated people was clothed in a magnificent black academic robe, edged in violet and gold. The collar seemed excessively gaudy, but somehow it fit the overall design. However, the exposed head was a bare skull. Points of dark red light glowed in its large eye sockets, and behind that skull glowed a halo of black radiance. The being in the other seat was not human either, merely a mass of a black, sticky substance. Its tar-like surface roiled and writhed continuously, never staying in the same shape for more than a second. The former was an overlord, the highest ranked of those magic casters who had become undead in order to learn the most potent spells. The latter was an elder black ooze, which boasted the most powerful corrosive ability of the slime families. I'm having trouble staying awake. I think I'll log off first. I'm glad I could meet you in the end. Good night. Said the elder black ooze, or rather hero. Today's the last day of the game. I know you're tired, but we'll never have a chance like this again. Why don't we stay together until the end? Of course, there was no response, because hero had already returned to reality. Ha. This is the great tomb of Nazarick that we built together. How could you abandon it just like that? No, they did not abandon it but made a choice between fantasy and reality. Mobius picked up the staff of Ain's old gown that had been crafted by the last few remaining members of the guild. I wonder if Shiraori-san will come online today. Probably will, she was the only other player that stayed behind after all. Speaking of Shiraori-san, she was truly a strange one. Mobius recollected their first encounter together as he walked past the unconquerable great underground tomb of Nazarick. She seemed to be online most of the times, but that makes sense considering the reason she gave. Apparently she had a terminally ill disease due to which she could not leave bed, so Yggdrasil was her only source of freedom. Poor girl. That's why we made an exception and allowed her to join Ain's old gown even if she was not a working member of society. She also rarely ever spoke, using her own voice, relying on the chat software instead to communicate, which she did a lot. When she did speak, it was a couple of barely audible words, causing Perarankino to name her Kaderi-chan before getting beaten up by her. Mobius thought about the time when their guild ventured into one of the highest level dungeons in Yggdrasil a few years back, the great elroe labyrinth, and sank into the depths of memories. Grasp heart, Mobius muttered, causing the great elroe basilisk to collapse dead before vanishing. The upper and middle stratum of the labyrinth no longer possessed any challenge at all to the members of Ains Olgaun's fully leveled members. As if on cue, Mamanga saw Touch Me and Albert Alan Odal, two of the strongest players in Yggdrasil, coming towards him while having their usual squabbles. Interestingly, there was another player called Shiraori on the leaderboard that was as strong as them, but surprisingly no one had really seen her until now. Bukabukagama, Pararankino, and Tabula Smargadina also appeared out of a gate, having cleared out the areas they were responsible for as planned earlier. "Let's head deeper," Mamanga said. The great elroe labyrinth was going to be their training ground before they conquered the great underground tomb of Nazarick. They had already made sufficient preparations, with the latter being their goal for quite a long time. "Is that some sort of spider monster over there?" Tabula remarked with surprise in his tone, drawing their attention towards where he pointed. Upon inspection, the others could understand his surprise, as they had never seen this sort of spider monster in the dozens of times they had raided the labyrinth. Causing them to appraise said spider monster. Name. Race, minimum lesser Horonia, unique species. Level, 0. Racial classes. All the other parts were blank. But one thing caught their attention. Creator/summoner, Shiraori. Normally Yggdrasil's system would give the title of summoner for a summoned beast, not creator. The only exception was if a player somehow managed to create a new species in some unknown manner. That would make sense considering the unique species in brackets. This spider seemed to have been created recently, as it's even weaker than when players first create their accounts and has not evolved yet. The other thing that caught their attention was that the creator was the aforementioned mysterious Shiraori. Their thoughts were cut short as the spider monster noticed them and ran away deeper into the labyrinth. "Let's follow it for now," Mamanga declared, genuinely curious about the player Shiraori. Chapter 4, Overlord. Having decided on their path of action, the members of Ains Olgaun started following the spider down into the lower stratum of the great elroe labyrinth. As mentioned earlier, they had conducted many raids on this labyrinth. This is their routine leveling spot, so they know the area pretty well, especially the upper and middle stratum. They had only been to the lower stratum a couple of times when they had slightly lower levels and never bothered going all the way down since then. All the way until now, that is. Thinking about Shiraori, it can somewhat be confirmed that she is a heteromorph due to her summon being a spider monster. Human and demi-human species don't typically have such summons, with animals at lower levels or mythical beings such as angels being common at higher levels. Even if the human and demi-human players were able to summon monsters for their use, they would choose not to, as it might cause them to be killed by other human players. Another one of the ploys the shitty devs incorporated to encourage heteromorph killing. Summoning is also a more common tactic used by heteromorphs such as Mamanga, who routinely summon skeletons and elder liches. Rare as it may be, there are a few other players who have managed to create unique species, and a characteristic of these summons is that they can exit permanently until killed. This is contrary to normal summons, which disappear over a period of time. A special perk bestowed as an achievement for creating a unique species. Such a characteristic can be a massive boon when considering wave tactics. Although they start of low-leveled and weak, they can be trained to create a massive army of high-leveled monsters. "I think we are getting closer to their nest," Albert said, pointing out the increasing number of Horonia appearing in the surroundings. Although those spiders glared at their presence, indicated by their glowing red eyes, it seems they knew about the disparity in strength between both sides. Finally, the cave they were walking through led to a clearing. Upon closer inspection, the entire clearing was filled with eggs, most of them broken and spiders crawling around. And in the center they found the player Shiraori, as indicated by the ID. Her main body is that of a beautiful young girl with bleach-white skin, white hair, and red eyes from the bottom of the waist up. From the waist down, the body is connected to a large spider by the head. The spider body was entirely white. She held a scythe that had an eerie resemblance to the spider legs. This was a heteromorph that none of them had ever seen in the entire time they had played the game, granted the number of heteromorphic players were few in number. They all used appraisal on her to get to know this. Name, Shiraori. Race, Arachne. Level, 97. Job, Nightmare of the Labyrinth. Alignment, Chaotic Evil. Sense of Justice, -350. Racial level. Small Lesser Terratect, 15. Small Terratect, 10. Small Poison Terratect, 5. Zoa ELE, 5. Eat Sane, 5. Zana Horawa, 5. Arachne, 2. Job levels. Poison Master, 10. Archmage, 10. Symbol of Death, 5. Ruler of Pride, 5. Ruler of Sloth, 5. Ruler of Perseverance, 5. Ruler of Wisdom, 5. Ruler of Charity, 5. Shing, the sound of the scythe brought them back to reality as they noticed their appraisal got blocked and alerted Shiraori. It seemed she thought they were going to attack her. We mean no harm or disrespect, we just want to talk to you. Momonga was the first to show himself and try to defuse the situation as they were indeed the ones at fault here. And it seemed to work as Shiraori slowly lowered the scythe as she saw the rest of the Ains Olgaun members. That was a good thing, as even though she has not yet reached LV 100, her character is broken with multiple unique classes they have no knowledge of. Not that they could not defeat her, but being the cautious person that he was, Momonga would never fight without pre-prepared intelligence. So far so good. Momonga thought, albeit confused over one thing: why does she seem so surprised, as if she the world ending? Shiraori POV. What the hell is going on here? Isn't that Ains? And the rest of them are Ains Olgaun members, right? As a senior overlord fan, there's no way I can mistake them. What are they doing in this world? Am I not in, so I'm a spider so what, but instead some sort of crossover world? I need more information. I was just resting until I felt someone trying to appraise my status, so I thought I had an enemy, but it turned out to be this. Talking it over with my parallel minds, the best course of action I can come up with is to stick with them until I get more information. Even better if I am able to join Ains Olgaun and leave this world. Kumo Disu Ga Nani Ka is a world on the edge of destruction. Isn't it better to go to the new world with Momonga and chill with a group of overzealous servants? It's an obvious choice, as I am not some goody two-shoes who wants to save the world at every turn like a classic Ice Guy protagonist. Cough. Schlain, cough. Parallel minds meeting adjourned. Okay, I replied in a barely audible voice. I think I have Komoko disease. I can't speak as much as I want to anymore. Huh, One-chan, what did you say? The slime who I know is Bukabukagama says in a purposefully cutesy voice. Damn, I'm getting flustered, so I decide on option B. Avoid talking altogether. I pull out paper and a pencil from out of nowhere. Don't ask where I acquired them from. And I write okay and show it to them. Is there something wrong with your voice? Momonga asks, slightly bewildered by the situation. To avoid any confusion later on, it's better to be truthful about this. So I wrote, I don't know how to speak to others properly. That's why I write like this. I am truthfully a bit embarrassed, as I was not like this before. Anyway, I kept a straight face, which was not difficult at all after so long. Momonga, this is true Gapmo, said Tabula with a serious face. Ha. Well, Momonga, this is what we call a Kaderi. Let's name Miss Shiraori Kaderi-chan from now on. Pararankino also said with a serious face before getting punched by yours truly out of the clearing. Well, that bird brain deserved it. Bukabukagama said, to which the other shrugged as if already used to his shenanigans. Anyway, blah, blah, yada yada. I spun some lies after that, due to which Momonga invited me to the guild, which I accepted. From their conversation and mentions of Yggdrasil, I could make out that this is in fact the in-game world of Yggdrasil on Helheim and not the world of So I'm a Spider So What. Although a crossover world is not yet ruled out and will need verification, I seem to be some sort of weird blend between NPC and a player. Probably this is what the glitch title meant. So playing along is the best choice. I told them a sob story that I'm terminally ill and can't move on my own, as well that my parents are somewhat rich, but other than paying for my medical expenses they don't care about me at all, to explain me being in-game all the time. Due to my circumstances they made an exception and allowed me into the guild even if I am not a working member of society. So, I finally left this hellhole I call home and took one step closer to going to the new world. Hopefully. Probably. Chapter 5, Progress. Hi y'all, it's yours truly, Shiraori. First of all, let's talk about everything that has happened since I left the labyrinth. As I said earlier, I joined the guild Ains Olgaun. In general, I get along pretty well with Albert and Tabula, as we each have chunny fantasies to talk about. We also conquered the great underground tomb of Nazarick successfully, with the guild being rewarded the throne of kings and Gargantua, who is now the floor guardian of the 4th floor. We also extended the original 6 floors of Nazarick to 11 floors. You heard me right, 11 floors. I added one more floor in addition to the other floors that were there in the light novels. The 9th floor now is basically a cut and paste of the caves in the great elroe labyrinth, with multiple monsters, traps, and also the nests of the Horonia. Invaders have that to look forward to as well before they even make it to the royal suite and the throne room. I had to use a wish upon the star prop to make this change possible. I also still have to design the NPC floor guardian for the new 9th floor. Speaking of the Horonia, they have evolved once and become many lesser Horonia. I also gained the 2 racial levels of the Arachne class, which made my total level to 99. How do I know about my Yggdrasil classification, levels, and classes? It took some time to understand all of it, as my own system was similar to the system in Kumo di Soji Nani Ka. What really allowed me to obtain Yggdrasil system information is getting the God, racial class, and administrator skill. Let's rewind a bit and talk about what happened. Basically, after raising my level to 99, I was not able to get the final level to make me LV 100 for some reason. So, I used the wisdom skill in order to find out what was necessary to get that final level, which ended up showing this. Conditions for special evolution into racial class God. 1. Glitch title. 2. Skill n%I equals W. 3. Racial class, Arachne. 4. Racial levels for class Arachne, 4. 5. Ruler classes acquisition. 5. World item, fruit from the world tree. 6. Divinity expansion LV10, automatically reached upon swallowing the fruit from the world tree. A/N, this is bullshit. I don't even know if such a world item exists. I just made up all this stuff as I didn't want to write about her swallowing a bomb and having to relearn all magic and skills like the LN. After I told about this to the members of Ain's Olgaun, we searched far and wide before coming across a dungeon in Asgard that triggered a special event. Upon clearing the dungeon by defeating divine beings from the Norse myth, well, their knockoffs at least, what was awarded was a mini world tree and a fruit, both of which were world items. It was nice addition to the guild's already vast world item collection. The world tree was planted on the 6th floor designed by Blue Planet, while the fruit was given to me. As I had already met all the conditions for evolution into a god except the fruit which I now possessed, I could move on to the evolution. My status after evolution now looks something like: Name, Shiraori. Race, God. Level, 100. Job, Nightmare of the Labyrinth, one of the almighty 41 supreme beings, divine beast, the spider goddess. Alignment, chaotic evil. Sense of justice, -350. Racial level. Small lesser pterodect, 15. Small pterodect, 10. Small poison pterodect, 5. Zoa ELE, 5. Eat Sane, 5. Zana Horowa, 5. Arachne, 4. God, 1. Job levels. Poison Master, 10. Archmage, 10. Symbol of Death, 5. Ruler of Pride, 5. Ruler of Sloth, 5. Ruler of Perseverance, 5. Ruler of Wisdom, 5. Ruler of Charity, 5. Skills, Administrator. The Administrator skill allowed me to hack into the system to limited levels and make minute changes. I don't know how this will play out in the new world, but for now in the game I managed to activate the chat software, gacha, shop, and also my Yggdrasil system, which you see now. A simple way to put it is I am more like a player now as compared to before. I think this is how the Overlord world managed to define the existence of Shiraori in its own standards, as my status board is essentially a copy-paste of the original Shiraori's. A/N, don't ask. I don't know if what I wrote here makes any sense at all myself. I just wanted to make a profound remark which became this nonsense. On to what I'm doing right now. I am adding finishing touches to my NPC who will act as a floor guardian for the 9th floor. Ever since I found out that this is Yggdrasil and joined Ain's Olgaun, I had been excited for this as it seems super fun, honestly. I am also keeping it simple. I'm just going to make Sophia Karen as my NPC. She was by far one of the strongest people within the confines of the system. All the members of Ains Olgaun who are online have come to the 9th floor to see my NPC. As they have no idea what Kumo Disu Ga Nanika is, they will be seeing Sophia for the first time. Hurry up, Komoko Wani-chan, show us your NPC, Bukabukagama said. Mamanga did not say anything but just stared. Albert was just giving Chunny remarks about how it better be meansing, which was rebuked by Touch Me. All in all, everyone was acting normally. And so I unveiled them my proud creation. What was in front of their eyes was a peerless beauty, with extremely pale white skin, silver color hair, blood-red eyes, and an hourglass figure. She was holding a broadsword made from the claw of a legendary class monster, Fenrir, a single-edged broadsword around 1.5 m long with a jagged backside. Their reactions were generally good, with Perarankino having to make some lewd remark before getting beaten up by his sister. They then opened her status sheet. Name, Sophia Karen. Creator, Shiraori. Allegiance, Shiraori/Ains Olgaun. Race, progenitor vampire. Level, 100. Job, servant of the Supreme Being, floor guardian of the 9th floor of Nazarick. Alignment, chaotic evil. Sense of justice, -400. Racial level. Human vampire, 15. Vampire, 10. True vampire, 10. Progenitor, 10. Job levels. Valkyrie/Broadsword, 15. Ruler of Envy, 10. Undying, 10. Master of Magic, 10. True Warrior, 10. Flavor text. Sophia is pretty dense in certain situations but has no qualms about using her power to muscle through them if she can. Her nature as a vampire causes her to lust for a battle that can challenge her, but she is denied that by intense training that has made her overwhelmingly more powerful than almost everything within the system. This causes her to lapse into depravity or depression when she focuses too much on it. Sophia has developed a kind of masochism or dependency towards her master Shiraori, which she mistakes for attention, going so far as to ask her master why she has not beaten her up so long. She is elated if she sees her master's weakened state, not out of negative intentions, but because she is delighted that she could be the one to protect her. She is much the same as any other NPC, being fanatically loyal to the supreme beings whom she considers gods right after her creator Shiraori. Sophia has also gotten increasingly possessive of Shiraori. Furthermore, when Shiraori becomes busy with work, the neglect caused her to suffer a slow mental decline that culminates in her causing an incident at Nazarick. Unfortunately, this only angered her creator and prompted her to become stricter with her. She has little to no alcohol tolerance. Chapter 6, A Growing Obsession. As Mamanga walked past the hallways of Nazarick whilst reminiscing and hoping for his guildmates to show up one last time before the game's fateful inevitable end, he finally reached the gates of judgment. The golems of Lemegeton stood as one of the last lines of defense before the gates to welcome any intruders who might trespass upon the guild's grounds. Made from prismatic ores that the guild had acquired from the 7 hidden mines. The gates were a majestic set of double doors that were over 5 meters in height and covered in intricate carvings. The left side was shaped into a beautiful goddess, while the right was made to resemble a cruel demon. So realistic was their design that even from across the room, one felt like they would attack. With a final sigh, Mamanga opened the gates and entered the throne room of Nazarick. Due to the dramatic flair that everyone in the guild possessed as well as the members' knack for role-playing, the throne room certainly reflected such tastes. Consisting of flags and majestic thrones for each of the members as well as the hard-earned world item, the Throne of Kings that lay at the end of the hall. Beside the Throne of Kings lay Tabula's masterpiece, the Guardian Overseer Albedo. The perfection that Albedo embodies was a testament to the crazy amount of dedication and effort Tabula put in order to perfect her. Mamanga took his seat at the Throne of Kings with the staff of Ains Olgaun hovering beside him, the position reserved for the guild master according to the roleplay the members were gunning for. He opened the flavor text that Tabula had inputted for Albedo, displaying a massive 40-page text. Tabula was always very keen on details. Although there was no harm done, other members felt this was totally unnecessary as, the NPCs were at the end of the day, bits of data. That would not change no matter how much they wished it to. Upon glossing over the entire text, he came to the final line which said, incidentally, she is a slut. Facepalming at the antics of his friend, having written such a long and detailed flavor text only to reduce her entire being to this one line. Mobius resolved to change this particular line on the last day of Yggdrasil, thinking Tabula would surely forgive him anyway. Deleting this line using his guild master's authority, he started writing, "She is deeply in love with." He was going to add his own username in that space, but finally deciding against it as he did not want to desecrate his friend's beloved NPC. Leaning back against the throne, he started loudly reciting the names associated with each of the flags that represented his guildmates. Pararankino, Tabula Smaragdina, Bukubukuchagama, Genjiro, and Shiraori. That's right, it was fun. I am sorry, Shiraori-san, but I don't think I can stay online until the end with the world ending after all. I guess I have to learn to let go and move on. So on this last day, at least for these final moments, I appoint Shiraori as the new guild master of Ain's Gown. I guess this is goodbye. Mobius accepted the transfer notification and made one last speech imbued with dramatic flair, showcasing his final act as a ruler before accepting the termination of his account. All the items in his inventory fell to the ground with loud clangs, and his player avatar lit up into flames with ashes vanishing into nothingness. The items on the floor as the only testament that proved his prior existence. The halls that once housed some of the mightiest players in all of Yggdrasil were left in eerie silence. For now. Albedo POV. Albedo's earliest memory was that of her lofty creator, Tabula Smaragdina, bringing her into existence. She watched as he put hours of efforts to make her as immaculate as possible, gifting her with immense intelligence and beauty. She was also filled with joy and a sense of duty upon her appointment as the guardian overseer. As much as she wanted to thank him, she could not do so. She simply accepted this fact as it is. This was because as an NPC, and even more so as the guardian overseer, the meaning of her entire existence was to follow the commands of the supreme beings, their gods. If she could not move or talk without her creator's commands, she felt that was entirely natural. As natural as breathing is to a living organism. She remembered the meeting that the supreme beings held within these glorious and sacred halls, where they each unveiled their proud creations to each other. She also shared that pride when she saw the other supreme beings congratulating her creator on his amazing work in creating her. Albedo thus vowed once again to work harder, not to let her creator's expectations down. Then that dreaded day appeared. Her creator had abandoned them. Abandoned her. She truly experienced the feeling abandonment as she heard the conversation between the mighty guild master Mobius and the youngest supreme being Shiraori, who is widely considered the younger sister of the supreme beings according to their conversations. It did not end with the disappearance of only her creator, as the other supreme beings disappeared day after day. This continued until only the two aforementioned supreme beings remained. Lady White routinely came to check up on her and spoke for hours in front of her, which was apparently abnormal as she did not speak normally. A/N, LOL, that's 'cause you can't speak. As the supreme beings started leaving, these periods of conversation were her most precious and treasured times. Albedo also saw Lord Mobius, albeit much more rarely. Though, as the supreme beings in all their infinite wisdom said, all good things must come to an end. Albedo was personally a witness to such an end, and that was the second time she felt abandonment and experienced true fear. The great guildmaster of Nazarick had arrived and took his rightful place upon his throne. He fiddled with something while apparently appreciating her before speaking in a solemn and rueful voice. She heard him account the names of all the long-departed supreme beings except Lady White, before talking about the end of the world and his resignation as the guildmaster. He appointed Lady White as the new guildmaster along with apologies for not being able to keep her company on this fateful day before vanishing into flames. The greatest supreme being had died. Midnight. As if to allow her to express her emotions of her own will for the first time in the entirety of her existence, she felt the constraints that bound her loosening. She was no longer wearing the mask of an ever-smiling face as she screamed and let all the emotions she had felt. She had many questions. Did the supreme beings leave because they were unsatisfied with the NPC's meager capabilities? Did the loosening of her constraints signify the definite departure of the supreme beings? She did not know. That was until she had the mighty gates of judgment opening for the second time today. As she quickly composed herself in a split second, making herself look like the capable and presentable guardian overseer she was, Albedo tuned around to witness the presence of the last supreme being who had never abandoned her. Lady White entered along with the Pleiades and the butler Sebastian. That split second upon gazing at the spider goddess allowed Albedo to confirm what must be done. She had to make Shiraori-sama the only rightful ruler of Nazarick and keep her beside them, or rather beside her. Forever. Lord Momonga might be a traitor for abandoning them, but he made her work a lot more easier by appointing Lady White as the guildmaster before his departure. Although she did not know when the world was ending, she will find a way to prevent it so she can remain with her lady. Chapter 7. What? I was walking past the conference room as I realized that I was late. I had promised to meet Momonga before the final moments of the game. Of course he did not know that this Nazarick would not truly disappear and this would simply be a new beginning in a new world. When it comes to new worlds, I can already be considered a veteran. This would after all be my second trip to a brand new world. I checked the timer on my status screen which showed 0:04. The transmigration had already occurred. I truly did not feel any difference like Momonga had, as Yggdrasil was already a living and breathing world for me. I had already abused my administrator skill to gather items and supplies. These were just some of the minor preparations I had made for my eventual travel to the new world. After all, I was an anomaly. Even though Nazarick truly overpowered the new world, I could not guarantee things would remain the same. What if Potamus or someone else suddenly appeared in the new world? So, I could not rely on my foreknowledge of the plot and instead only use it as a reference. Anyway, I don't plan on doing much. Let Momonga handle all the annoying stuff while I laze around like the shut-in that I am / big smiley face / is that Seabass and the Pleiades? Shouldn't they have gone with Momonga to the throne room? Well, I guess the butterfly effect is already starting to act. Anyway, there is no harm done with this minor stuff. Upon seeing me, they immediately bowed down. Well, I am their supreme being, after all. I typed "follow me" with a thought into the chat software which was still active for some reason. If it was still working, it would make my life a whole lot easier as I won't need to write down whatever I want to say, every time I want to say it. As you wish, Lady White. Seabass replied, bowing with one hand in front of his chest. It seems they got the message. Phew, good for me. I calmly walked past Seabass and the Pleiades, keeping my eyes closed as usual as they started to follow behind me. I didn't want to obliterate them as they were now my servants after all. We walked calmly until we reached the gates of judgment, as I soon stopped before Seabass opened the gates to the throne room. By now Momonga should be panicking, so I guess I'll help him out now before dumping any work to him. Whilst I was thinking with glee as I imagined my glorious slacker life, the view inside the throne room was one that I did not expect. Albedo was facing the unoccupied throne of kings as she slowly turned around. Did she just stare at me like she wanted to kill me? I'm getting chills for some reason. Maybe it's just my imagination. Also, what are all those items scattered across the floor? I did not understand the situation, so I directly questioned Albedo using the chat software, even if she was giving off dangerous vibes right now. Albedo, what is going on here? Where is Momonga? Momonga-sama has unfortunately left us. He appointed you as the new ruler of Ain's Olgown before vanishing into flames, leaving behind all the items in his possession. My lady, I beg you not to abandon us as well and rule us as the last remaining supreme being. Albedo said in a low and grim voice with a pleading tone. What? How could Momonga-sama pass away? No way. There's no way that's true, right? The Pleiades started clamoring over the shocking news. Seabass did not say anything, but the wavering of his eyes betrayed how shocked he was as well. Shiraori.exe stopped working. As for me, I was not paying attention to them. Momonga terminated his account. That vanishing into flames is a special animation for account termination, right? Is this the same Momonga that I know? The one who is obsessed with Yggdrasil and Nazarick? And what the hell did she mean Momonga appointed her as guildmaster? I want my slacker life and not work for my entire immortal existence. Momonga, you betrayed me. Wait. No way. Is that why Albedo looked like she wanted to murder me? Don't tell me he changed Albedo's settings to "she is deeply in love with Momonga" before leaving. The reason she wants to kill me is because she thinks I robbed the throne from Momonga and made him leave. Damn you. Not only did you leave me all the duties that should be rightfully yours, but also made me clean up your mess. I know how scheming Albedo is. She could be smiling and talking to you happily while plotting how to torture and kill you. She also made such plans towards the other supreme beings and created a secret squad to hunt them down, whilst keeping all this a secret even from Ains. So while she is asking me to stay behind and not leave them, she could be thinking of ways to torture me as revenge for driving Ains away. Okay, calm down. I am immortal. Nothing can harm me. Not even a demon with more intelligence than both my lives combined. Worst case, I'll just kill her. Maybe I can try to use the administrator skill to rewrite her settings. Never mind. Let's just solve the issues at present. Luckily my skill at keeping a poker face is max level, so no one figured out my emotions under this torrent of thoughts. Let's diffuse the situation first. I conveyed my thoughts quickly. Calm down. We are now in a state of emergency. Albedo, gather all the guardians except Gargantua and Victim here in the throne room within half an hour. We have to discuss countermeasures against the current situation. As you command, my lady. Albedo bowed before departing quickly. Quickly clear up all of Momanga's items in time for the meeting. We don't have time to waste. I commanded the Pleiades before giving an inaudible sigh. As the Pleiades got to work, I thought about how everything is going off the rails from the very beginning. I have my work cut out ahead of me. My poor slacker life. Chapter 8, Ruler. Upon sending Albedo to call all the guardians, I handed the staff of Ains Olgown to Oriole Omega and tasked her with protecting it in the Cherry Blossom Sanctuary, while keeping an eye outside Nazarick for the foreseeable future. The rest of the Pleiades were also very efficient in their work as they cleaned up Ains' massive inventory in 20 minutes. He was a collector after all. I commanded them, place all of the items in Momanga's room. I will hand them to Pandora's actor later. They bowed and left the throne room, leaving me and Seabass waiting alone until the guardians arrive in a few minutes. I am certain they won't be late, as they may see it as blasphemy to deny the Supreme Being's call, not that I personally care so much though. I also won't be following Ains' plan of covering up Nazarick with dirt and surrounding it with dummy hills. Not that it was a bad plan, but all the changes that are happening is making me insecure. Hopefully, nothing much will go off the rails in the new world. Fingers crossed. Seabass started walking towards the gates of judgment to open them. I guess the guardians had already arrived while I was preoccupied in my thought process. Albedo entered first while leading the rest of the floor guardians, by order of the floors they are in charge of. I used the chat software to immediately address the NPCs present, who were kneeling on the floor before me. Thank you for assembling here on my call. All of Nazarick has been affected by dimensional magic even beyond my capabilities. I don't know who or what is responsible for this. As you may have also heard, Momanga has departed from our midst during such a perilous situation where we have no knowledge of what is going on. So, I require your assistance more than ever right now. I may have added a bit of dramatic flair to my little speech, but it looks like I managed to get the point across. Albedo spoke on behalf of Seabass as well as all the guardians present in the throne room. While all of us are very sad that Lord Momanga has left us, we vow to work even harder for the last remaining Supreme Being despite our meager capabilities. After all, there is no reason for us to continue living without a Supreme Being to serve. This we swear. This we swear. All the floor guardians repeated after her. While what she said was very touching, it just gave me more chills considering it is Albedo who spoke. I will check up on her settings after the chaos of transmigration settles down and I have everything in order. To think I naively and happily believed my long-awaited slacker life had finally arrived. Well, no matter. I'll just settle the affairs of transmigrating into the new world before handing my work to the NPCs and relax until I get information of any events that are not in Overlord light novels. Everything is still fine. My slacker life is delayed, that's all. Lady White, we have already been informed of what has happened. While I do wish Lord Momanga was here with us right now, Albedo is right. We need a Supreme Being to lead us. As the last remaining Supreme Being and the one that Lord Momanga passed on right of regency to, please take your rightful place upon the throne. It was Demiurge who spoke this time. I was going to try and delay this as much as possible to live my happy slacker life within my dreams at the very least, but there's no more time left to deny the current situation. The troubles of having fanatic subordinates. Letting out an audible sigh, I climbed up the stairs slowly. Fluoroscopy showed me the magnificently dreadful throne of kings even with my eyes closed. I was so tempted to open my eyes and use my evil eye skills on this throne. Shaking my head to remove unnecessary thoughts, I sat down on the throne of kings. The cheers from the NPCs were making things difficult to forget though as the "All Hail Lady White. All Hail the Supreme One" hammered reality into my skull. Even skill, escapism LV max could not help me in this situation. I raised my hand to stop their chants before the situation got out of control and wrote. Firstly, as I said earlier, Nazarick might be transported to some other place. Raise the security by 2 levels. Guardian Overseer Albedo and Defense Commander Demiurge, create a better communication system between the different floors of Nazarick. I'll just pillage this idea from Mamanga. As you command, my lady, both of them replied. As we don't know what is out there right now, I plan to hide Nazarick inside my pocket dimension. Imagine I was alone inside enemy territory and surrounded by enemies on all sides. Now, suddenly I pull out Nazarick and all the NPCs from my pocket dimension. This could be a game changer. My pocket dimension already contained multiple clones of myself right now. After that, I started typing but was interrupted by a message from Oriole Omega. What happened? I questioned. My lady, I can see some humans approaching Nazarick's location carrying some unknown devices. Should we attack them? Humans with strange devices? Maybe some magic items of the New World? I don't know what kind of changes have taken place anymore. I'll just bring those humans here and figure everything out. No, don't do anything yet. Send the Pleiades to guard the first floor. As you wish. With that she cut off the message. Is everything all right, my lady? Albedo asked with some concern evident on her face. The same was true for the other guardians. Not in the mood to check if Albedo's behavior was fake right now, I spoke calmly. I just got a message from Oriole Omega. Apparently some humans with strange devices are making their way towards Nazarick. Humans? Maybe they are the ones that brought us here and are planning to use those devices to attack us. Aura asked with a confused expression. There's no way that mere humans are capable of using magic even beyond Our Lady's abilities to summon us here. Shaltir immediately denied this, her disdain for humans evident in her voice. Whatever the reason may be, they might be trying to invade Nazarick. Cositus spoke up while spewing out cold air. His weapon clenched tightly in case he had to be prepared for a battle. Battling any invaders was one of the reasons he was created for after all. We will get to know everything after we meet these humans. Demiurge, invite our guests to the throne room. You can use force if they refuse to comply. As you wish, my lady, Demiurge spoke up with glee in his voice. Oh poor humans, whoever you are. For your own safety, you should come here quietly without a fuss. The reason I sent Demiurge is that he is careful and prepared even if he is not the most powerful guardian. I can't guarantee the results if I send someone like Shaltir after all. Demiurge, take this ring of Ain's old gown. As I passed on the ring to him, he was even more happier at my words with his tail swishing around. Demiurge did not get the ring from Ain's until the volume I had read. I'll just count it as giving it in his place as it was long overdue in the novels. He will also be able to return quickly to the throne room. Although Demiurge happily took the ring and left the throne room in a hurry, not everyone was so happy. Well, everyone except me was not happy. All of them were struck with envy. Sophia had the ruler of envy class, so it was understandable. It was understandable even for the other guardians except Albedo. Why did she give that split-second glare towards the ring as I passed it on? Maybe she wanted Ain's to give it to her. I'll make sure to give her one, once I change her settings back to normal in a few days' time. Let's just hope those humans give me the answers I need right now. Chapter 9, The Devil Loves to Smile. Demiurge POV. Demiurge moved quickly towards the first floor using the ring of Ain's old gown. The massive grin on his face and swishing of his tail indicated how happy he was. He kept stroking the precious ring he had received. It was truly precious. My precious, he thought. He thought back to everything that had occurred. Firstly, the constraints binding him being released. He thought this was due to the order of the supreme beings, so there was not much reason to question this. Except it was not. Arguably, 10 minutes after being free to move of his own will, the guardian overseer Albedo had arrived on his floor. This was definitely not normal, as Albedo had the honor of serving beside the supreme beings personally in the throne room. What followed in the quick conversation after that was Albedo providing the news of Lord Momanga's untimely passing. While he was sad that yet another supreme being had left them and departed the world, there was one silver lining to all of this. Lady White had remained behind and summoned them in the throne room within a few minutes. Not to mention Lord Momanga passing on the right to rule Nazarick to her. With sadness as the melody playing in the background, Demiurge quickly made his way towards the throne room. Being late was not an option. Disobeying the Supreme One's orders was one of the actions of highest disrespect one could commit. It seemed that all his fellow guardians and comrades thought so as well as they gathered before the mighty gates of judgment. Albedo arrived after inviting everyone and turned towards them to issue one last warning with a glare. We will now be in audience with the Supreme Being. Remember, no mistakes are allowed here. If Lady White was to be dissatisfied due to our mistakes and leave as well, then none of us can take responsibility for committing such a sin. Everything must happen perfectly and we must satisfy all her desires. While Albedo told this to all of us in such an aggressive manner, none of us felt offended. This was because what she said was entirely true. They were finally having the opportunity to serve the Supreme One and share her burdens, if any at all. And they must deliver perfectly, especially as they are the guardians appointed by the Supreme Beings. As the gates were opened by the head butler Seabass, who he never gets along with, we could finally see Lady White in all her glory. He had heard from his creator, Lord Albert, that she uses a skill called recognition obstruction against those who are not close to her, so that they do not recognize her. This is already a sign of primary acceptance of the NPCs. This was already more than any of them could hope for. We followed Albedo into the throne room and pledged our allegiance to the Supreme Beings and then heard her voice in their minds. Thank you for assembling here on my call. All of Nazarick has been affected by dimensional magic even beyond my capabilities. I don't know who or what is responsible for this. As you may have also heard, Momanga has departed from our midst during such a perilous situation where we have no knowledge of what is going on. So, I require your assistance more than ever right now. Dimensional magic beyond her capabilities. While he doubts someone could have a mastery over the mysteries of space beyond Lady White, even a fool might have been able to use an object such as a world-class item in order to trap their lady. This is truly a dangerous situation where we as guardians need to ensure that no threats approach their lady at all. After swearing to help Lady White, Demiurge spoke up. Lady White, we have already been informed of what has happened. While I do wish Lord Momanga was here with us right now, Albedo is right. We need a Supreme Being to lead us. As the last remaining Supreme Being and the one that Lord Momanga passed on right of regency to, please take your rightful place upon the throne. This was because he could see some sort of hesitation within their lady. Maybe she feels that she is betraying her comrades by taking Lord Momanga's place. Luckily no accidents happened and she did not deny her rightful place upon the throne. As she sat down on the throne of kings, they witnessed the birth of a new ruler firsthand. The other NPCs would be very jealous of this as only us, the Guardians as well as Seabass, were able to witness this historic moment. As the cheers died down and Lady White started assigning their duties, we focused on our tasks with utmost concentration. She also decided to hide the entirety of Nazarick within her own pocket dimension for our safety. Such feats of space magic were even beyond Lord Momanga or Lord Albert, who were well-known magic casters. It was also well known that Lady White used incomprehensibly different magic as compared to the other dwellers of Yggdrasil. She was however interrupted by a message from Oriole Omega about the news of possible approaching invaders with strange objects. If they did come with the purpose of invasion, then he was amazed by the courage these filth possessed to intrude upon the sacred grounds of the Supreme Beings. Amidst his silent fury, he heard Lady White come at him, "We will get to know everything after we meet these humans. Demiurge, invite our guests to the throne room. You can use force if they refuse to comply." Demiurge was smiling with glee as he could fulfill the Supreme One's order personally. He also hoped that those insects did not comply, as he could teach them a lesson in person before dragging them to be judged by Lady White. His nature as a devil compelled such cruelty after all. The only exceptions to this were his fellow comrades in Nazarick as well as, of course, the supreme beings. What brought even more happiness to him was being bestowed the ring of Ain's Olgown. No other NPC had ever had such an honor yet. He could feel the envy on every NPC present in the throne room. This was a symbol of trust in his capabilities. He could not fail their goddess and let her trust down. No, he had to work even harder to prove himself worthy of that trust. His little flashback was over as he reached the first floor where the Pleiades had gathered. In fact, all this passed through his mind in a matter of seconds. They bowed immediately upon seeing him. This was not surprising, as being a guardian appointed by the supreme beings, he was their superior. As such, he immediately took charge of the situation. Solution: follow me to invite those vermin for an audience with Lady White. Yuri Alpha will remain in charge of the rest of the Pleiades on the first floor. Let's not waste any more time. Yes, Lord Demiurge. As he started walking, he immediately cast a dimensional lock on the surroundings as clandestinely as possible, while sending a message to Oriole Omega to stop any escapees if any at all. They might be dealing with people specializing in space magic, so such measures were necessary. He also asked the evil lords under his command to surround the area as backup. They were teleported by Oriole Omega. One might think that such preparation was overkill for mere humans, but he was never careless. Anything less than perfection was not acceptable in his books. That's how he was designed to be. Chapter 10, Mobius. Mobius M. Mobius POV. What have we gotten ourselves into? This was a question Mobius had never even considered. As a member of the TVA, created by the Timekeepers, stopping Nexus events was his life's raison d'etre. He might have had a longing for jet skis as well, but that fascination was not enough to distract him from his work. That was how it had always been for as long as he could remember. Today as well, should have been like any other day. Well, day is not a correct term to use as time runs differently in the TVA, but he digressed. What he meant to say was that he should have had a pleasant meal while preventing the sacred timeline from branching. Maybe stop a Nexus event or two. But none of this was within his, or rather any of the hunters and Minutemen with him in this situation. Mobius was having a conversation with Judge Renslayer which was interrupted by Hunter B-15. Panic was evident on her face. That itself was a giveaway of a slightly odd situation. She spoke in a hurry. There is a fork in the timeline. It's starting to cause chaos on a massive scale. I have never seen a Nexus event like this. Not even the Timekeepers have warned us about this situation. We have to stop this quickly before it gets out of control. That was odd. The Timekeepers regulated the flow of the sacred timeline. They generally informed the TVA of any branches in the timeline in time for them to be stopped. The only reason he could think of that they did not inform them of this Nexus event was if they were not aware of it themselves. Judge Renslayer called upon Miss Minutes and analyzed everything before sending an announcement to the TVA. Hunter Teams B and C will be dispatched to deal with the anomaly. Temporal interference is about to cross the threshold. Act immediately. Mobius, you will be going with them. Giving a nod to Renslayer, Mobius made his way with B-15 to where the hunters were quickly getting equipped. Mobius got equipped quickly as well. He did not specialize in fighting, but as an experienced agent, he had faced his fair share of battles as well. They quickly used the tempad to open the time door to the location of the detected anomaly. It was rather far back into the Earth's past at around 400 BCE. Although Earth was a common target for the TVA to act upon, they rarely ventured that far into the past. It was well known in the TVA that Earth was at its most chaotic period around the 19th century and onwards. This still did not change their task as exited the time door into a lush forest. The hunters and Minutemen were holding their time sticks while analyzing their surroundings carefully. It was Mobius who took the lead in directing them towards the location where the temporal interference was coming from using the tempad. He was already used to this. All Mobius wanted was to finish his task quickly and go back to eat some salad. That was until where things were fine. The signals on the tempad spiked as they heard footsteps approaching them calmly. He signaled all the hunters to be alert. What appeared in front of them was a man in a red pinstripe suit and pant with glasses covering his eyes and a massive grin on his face. His hands crossed behind his back. He was probably not human. He thought so due to the tail swishing behind him. Why, probably. Mobius had met a lot of freaks during his job. The men in front of them could have been similar to such a freak. Maybe the tail was simply some sort of bionic attachment. Though it could not be denied that he was some sort of monster as well. Following closely behind the men was a maid. It was a maid with blonde hair, and although she was a stunning lady, the creepy grin on her face destroyed that image of her. Anyway, they better finish this quickly as these two creeps were giving him the chills. Just as B-15 was going to speak, the men beat her to it. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. My name is Demiurge. My lady has sincerely invited you to meet her. I would like not to displease her by being late, so if you could kindly follow me we will proceed. I don't think you would like what will happen otherwise. He spoke with a tone of absolute confidence. This was the same tone they used while sentencing people for violation the sacred timeline. A look high up from above cast on those time criminals. We will meet your lady next. But first, we hereby arrest the both of you for crimes against the sacred timeline. B-15 disregarded the man's words and replied. It was too late to stop her. It seems she could not sense the strength of the two people in front of her. Or she was too drunk on arrogance to notice. As the Minutemen and hunters surrounded the two time criminals, one of them tried to handcuff the maid with the time twisters, only for her to change into jelly and come out intact. She spoke. Is it fine if we capture them, Lord Demiurge? Well, we invited them and gave them a warning. I believe Lady White's condition has been fulfilled. Go ahead, but don't waste too much time. Just make sure they live. We don't know if Lady White has some other plans for them. As you wish. She replied with a creepy grin spreading wider, to inhumane extents. She turned into slime and swallowed 3 of the Minutemen before spewing them out. They had passed out. Don't worry. While I specialize in assassination, I like to play with poison as well. I only injected the 3 of them with a mild anesthetic. She commented with an odd glee in her voice. This was all wrong. We can't deal with these two. Just the maid is this dangerous, not to mention the man named Demiurge who seems to be her superior. We have to leave. Now. Mobius commanded, and while B-15 looked like she wanted to continue fighting, she had some sanity left after all. She seemed to agree as well. The danger was evident now. Now, I can't have you escape. That will mean I failed the task entrusted to me, and I would rather die than to let that happen. So, cease all resistance and forget any ideas of escape. What the hell is he? What? My body won't listen to me. It's as if Demiurge's words had magic. It appears to be the same for the rest of them as well. Don't entertain any thoughts of ending your own life. Hand over any weapons or tools you might be carrying. It appears that my worries were for naught. All of you amount to only this much after all. Perhaps I was indeed too cautious. Solution, take all their items. Yes, Lord Demiurge. The maid Solution took all of our tempads, time twisters, and time sticks in her possession before melting them into her own body. Follow obediently. And you would do best to show sincere respect to my lady. Even if she is kind and merciful enough to forgive any of your sins, the rest of us are not. I would have wanted to take time playing with all of you even more, but I do realize we are starting to run late. While the man named Demiurge finished speaking, a black swirling void opened behind him. As the both of them entered into the void, all of us followed after him, not knowing what fate awaits us. Chapter 11, New World. Or. Mobius M. Mobius POV. As we exited the dark swirling void, what lay ahead of us was a cemetery about 200 meters wide in all 4 directions. It was enclosed by 6-meter-tall perimeter walls surrounding the tomb, with 2 entrances at the front and back gates. There were lots of statues of goddesses and angels dotting around the cemetery. In addition, there were 4 mausoleums or tombs in the 4 cardinal directions, with a large mausoleum in the center. The surroundings of the center mausoleum held 8 10-meter-tall armor-wearing figures. That black swirling void must have been some sort of dimensional gate that transported us to this place. You should be thankful for having an audience with the Supreme Being. The last foolish humans who invaded here were all slaughtered without exception. Demiurge spoke as matter-of-factly. Not that his words brought any sort of encouragement. They could only hope that this lady who they refer to as the Supreme Being would be willing to listen to them. Maybe they could just get through this ruined day safely if they could talk to her properly. Upon walking to the entrance of the largest mausoleum, there were other maids lined up over there. Most looked human, except that one maid who looked like a spider attempting to mimic a human. Solution: you can join them in keeping a watch here until Lady White gives further orders. Demiurge spoke. The maid, Solution, quietly joined the other maids who bowed in perfectly practiced coordination. From what I can gather so far, this Lady White, or the Supreme Being, is the one in charge here, with Demiurge right behind her. There could be others on Demiurge's level as well, but that is not yet certain. They also do not seem to lack resources as implied by the beautiful architecture visible in the surroundings. And while I am not certain how genuine their feelings towards Lady White are, they seem to mimic how cultists would view their god. Welcome to the great underground tomb of Nazarick, the holy grounds built and inhabited by the supreme beings. Demiurge spoke with his hand widely raised in the air as we entered the mausoleum. He said, supreme beings. So there is more than one ruler here. If this is a cult, maybe they follow a structure like the Greek pantheon. Another question is, why would they build their holy grounds inside a mausoleum? Demiurge did not give them more time to think as he gently stroked the ring on his hand. Mobius could be wrong, but he thought that he heard a vague, almost inaudible muttering saying, "My precious," from somewhere. He was possibly hallucinating due to stress. Within the split second that he closed his eyes, all of them were in a new place. A hall with a huge gate at its end. A demon and an angel in front of it, as if they were the gatekeepers. He did not have more time to inspect the surroundings as the gates were opened by an old man in a butler suit. As they followed Demiurge inside, they witnessed what seemed to be a throne room. There were thrones on both sides of the room, with the walls being adorned by exquisite flags. There were multiple clearly non-humans standing in front of the stairs at the end of the room. A beautiful woman with black hair and black wings. If it weren't for the horns on top of her head, you would think she was an angel. Two children who seemed to be twins, a boy and a girl with heterochromatic eyes and long ears like elves. A giant insectoid creature holding a halberd. And two more women who he can be sure were also some sort of monsters, even if they seemed relatively normal. All of them seemed to be glaring daggers at us as if they wished to tear us apart. As he was going to look towards the throne at the top of the stairs to see the Supreme Being, he heard Demiurge speak. "Kneel down on your knees. Bow your heads before the Supreme One." Their knees instantly gave away as their head fell towards the floor due to the sudden pressure applied. Mobius could hear footsteps walking towards the stairs as Demiurge spoke once more. "I apologize for being late, Lady White. I have brought the invaders as ordered. Solution has confiscated all their weapons and tools. It's fine, Demiurge. Let them raise their heads." They heard a soft, calm, and beautiful voice in their minds. "You are permitted to raise your heads." And with that we could see the Supreme One. All Mobius could think of looking at her was white. Shaking away unnecessary thoughts, Mobius thought about how to approach this conversation. Talking was his speciality after all, unlike fighting. This was his domain. Shiraori POV. As we were waiting for Demiurge, I sorted out some other matters that I had to address. Luckily the NPCs are super capable and not to mention dependable, so everything was handled quickly. Along with all the other things I have already planned and mentioned, I should meet all the NPCs once as well. I can check everyone's settings along with Albedo's. Due to my presence, their settings could have been different from the original as well, but at the very least the Guardians seemed to be behaving as they would have in Overlord. Luckily, Demiurge did not make us wait for long as the gates opened once more. Now let's quickly sort out this mess, so I can figure out what actions to take and then relax. Or so I assumed everything would work out. The people who appeared following Demiurge definitely did not appear in Overlord, or Kumo Diso for that matter. Even their clothing was rather modern. These sorts of clothes don't belong to the new world, unless I transmigrated to the future instead of the same time period as Ains did. As Demiurge made them kneel, I just took a long stare at all of them. That man in the front seems familiar somehow. I am certain I have seen him somewhere, but I can't remember where. I then typed and replied to Demiurge's apology for being late, though I thought he came back rather quickly. "It's fine, Demiurge. Let them raise their heads." As I made eye contact with the man, the familiarity I felt earlier was definitely not wrong. I did know him somehow. What I can be sure of now is that this most likely is not the new world. There is still a possibility that it is a crossover world. I quickly asked. What is your name? And where is our current location right now? He took a pause and replied, my name is Mobius and we are in Mexico, Earth in the year 401 BCE. Nanny. We are in Mexico. That too in 401 BCE. And the name Mobius definitely rings a bell. That name along with his look. Now I remember where I saw him. Oh no. No oh. It's not that world, right? Definitely not. I can feel my slacker life slipping away if that's true. Ugh, I'll just confirm it myself quickly, this stress is not good for my health. I opened my eyes and used the evil eye of past sight on Mobius. And the steady influx of information confirmed my suspicions. This is definitely the Marvel world. Or at least has the Marvel worldview in it. That in itself is horrible. Imagine if it was a blend of DC and Marvel. The silver lining is that the TVA I saw in Mobius's memories was the one from the Loki TV show, so they are easier to take care of with the power of Nazarick if handled properly. But that does not confirm if Marvel Comics elements are present in this worldview as well. Knowing my luck and how the universe wants to deny me my slacker life, this universe will most likely have elements of Marvel Comics as well. I could feel my self-control slipping. I give up, just let me live peacefully. Naiwa. Chapter 12, Plan. Over the course of these few seconds I had a relapse of PTSD. I could feel my fear aura along with all the buffs from the titles I have, being released due to my lack of control. At the very least in the new world my strength was pretty much guaranteed. After all, I was a mighty spider ruling a tomb full of evil beings. In the world portrayed by Marvel Comics, such strength is meaningless. It all depended on the author's whims and wishes regarding who won or perished. Not to mention the plethora of beings stronger than me in Marvel. Even cosmic entities are not safe from this as they regularly get beaten by people much weaker than them. Deep breath first, I have to deal with the issues in front of me, before making detailed plans for the future as well as contingency plans in case anything goes wrong, which it most certainly will. I will have my dearest slacker life. Nothing can stop me, not even the entire Marvel multiverse. I quickly got my fear aura under control and also closed my eyes. I would have talked to those humans happily if not for the news they brought. There was no need for further conversation as the evil eye of past sight has already told me everything I need to know. I used the parallel mind skill to discuss what's the next course of action and came up with a plan. Looking back towards the Mobius and the rest of the TVA members, they were all shaking out of fear. The fear aura seemed to work very well. They were only normal human beings after all. Even after I stopped releasing the fear aura, their shaking did not subside. The glaring guardians were not doing them any favors either. A tiny void opened above my palm as my tiny spider clones crawled out of there. They crawled all the way towards the TVA members, over their bodies and into their ears all while they could not resist. As expected, the humans started screaming. Wait, what? And no. Get those creepy bugs of me. Mom, help me, I'm scared of spiders. Daddy, save me, I'll provide you with a lifetime supply of bananas. Just get that spider out of my EARRR. A/N, random BS. Some of those shouts were weird. Wait, why are the Guardians getting angry again right now? Is it because they called my spider clones creepy? Never mind. My little spider clones made their way into their skulls and connected to their minds as peace and tranquility was restored to the throne room. Now I have full control over these humans. I sent a message to Solution and summoned her to the throne room. She should arrive in a few minutes. That gives me enough time to work on my plan. The reason Nexus events occur according to the TVA is, in simple terms, because someone does something they are not meant to do. The reason for the anomaly the TVA encountered this time, the one that He Who Remains could not foresee, was of course due to their entrance into this world. After all, not only does our existence disrupt the regular flow of time, it is not even meant to exist in this entire multiverse. All in all, we are a true anomaly. Due to our presence, the multiversal war that Marvel was hyping about is inevitable. In fact, it was inevitable even without our presence, as this world loves to throw everything into shit. Since everything is going to shit anyway, I'll just ensure peace for a little while with my plan. Ever since I found out this is the world of the Marvel multiverse, I have been using my parallel minds to understand the administrator's skill adequately. In Yggdrasil, it allowed me to hack into the system to limited levels, but now there was no system. Then I remembered what the Ancient One said in the Doctor Strange movie, that spells are programs, the source code that shapes reality. This got me thinking that if I consider this entire universe as one big system, then I could hack into it using the administrator's skill and achieve an effect akin to reality warping. Of course, as a low-tier god, the effect would be limited. So I definitely could not achieve something like the "No More Mutants" spell that Wanda used. That said, it was enough for what I planned. I am going to make the universe think that we were always a part of this universe. Of course, that would not be enough to divert the TVA's attention. If the Nexus event that gave them such trouble disappeared without a trace and the members they sent to investigate returned empty-handed, they would have no idea what caused the anomaly in the first place. Then they would definitely keep trying to investigate the root cause of the anomaly, and I don't want to deal with that headache. Even if the TVA in the Loki TV show is rather weak, I prefer having no troubles at all over a bunch of flies buzzing around me. With that said, I thought, skill, administrator, which opened a menu floating in the air in front of me. Earth. Outlier, the great underground tomb of Nazarick, outlier. I quickly found a line that was highlighted in red and deleted the outlier. This would deceive the universe sufficiently. Now if I tried to add that Shiraori is the creator of the universe into the code, that would result in an error. As I said earlier, I am still a low-tier god. I then quickly pulled out a Horn of the Goblin General from my pocket dimension. Yes, that's right. The same trash item that Ains gave to Henry. I then again used the administrator skill on the horn and added the outlier tags next to it. This would make it so that no matter what members of Nazarick do, it would be considered normal, while this tiny horn would be the only object from out of this multiverse. Now, I would control the humans to bring back the horn to the TVA so that they would leave us in peace. The mind-controlled Mobius could also steal information from the TVA and provide it to me so that I can use the knowledge of future events along with my understanding of comics and movies to come up with the contingency plans. I do understand that someone will most likely figure everything out soon, but hopefully I will be better prepared by then. A/N. I don't know anything about any sort of coding at all. Whatever I have written above is what I think coding is. As a master of the art of bullshit, making up all of this nonsense is my forte. Just as I finished making the changes, Solution entered the throne room. I ordered her, Solution, return their belongings to them. Everything except for the object that man named Mobius was holding. I of course knew everything that the TVA members experienced with Demiurge and Solution due to the effect of my evil eye. The Tempad would allow me to escape all over the timeline in case something goes wrong. Time is still something beyond reach for many beings after all. As I would be carrying Nazarick in my pocket dimension, I could just start anew in a safer place, if such a place exists. Solution did as I ordered and the controlled humans equipped themselves with practiced ease. I handed them the Horn of the Goblin General as they used the Tempad to open a time door and walk into it. The time door soon vanished with the TVA members out of sight. I then quickly used dimensional magic to hide Nazarick in my pocket dimension. Not wanting to deal with the Guardians right now and tired after this whole fiasco, I used the chat software to command. I will explain everything in due time. I just need some rest right now. We will talk later. And not wanting to interact any further than what was already beyond my daily limit for social interaction, I used the Ring of Ains Olgown teleport to my room on the 10th floor and collapse on my comfy bed, letting sleep engulf me. Chapter 13, Infiltration. Mobius POV. We could feel fear gripping us due to the power given off by the Supreme One. That fear did not dissipate even after she stopped releasing that power. Mobius did not know how his reply had annoyed the monstrous being in front of him. While all of us were rightfully confused, the servants that guarded that demon on the throne did not seem to think so. Their glaring got even more intense as a result. This fear spiked as Lady White summoned tiny white spiders from out of nowhere, and they crawled all over their bodies and into their ears. Mobius could hear the screeches of his comrades as he was struggling himself. Wait, what? No. Get those creepy bugs of me. Mom, help me, I'm scared of spiders. Daddy, help me, I'll provide you with a lifetime supply of bananas. Just get that spider out of my EARRR. While he was confused by that last shout that seemed rather out of place, he could not dwell on it. His consciousness was slipping, or rather being altered, into something else. When Mobius opened his eyes again, he was born anew. He felt free of all the restrictions that the TVA had imposed on him. All of their false propaganda had been laid in the open for him to witness. The great supreme being, Lady White, had opened his eyes and given a new meaning to his life. The mission imposed on him was a sacred trial that had to be completed with no option of failure. He understood everything right now. All that time he spent toiling in the TVA was all for this one opportunity to serve the supreme being. Looking at the hunters and the Minutemen present, they thought so as well. The maid from earlier soon entered the throne room and returned all of their belongings to them. The hostility in the eyes of the Supreme One's servants dampened as the members of the TVA present were no longer the filthy sinners from earlier, but rather the ones that would carry out the Supreme One's plans. Soon it was time for them to depart. While Mobius wanted to look towards the goddess once more, he now understood what a sacrilege that was. Not to mention his earlier thoughts. Thinking of the Supreme Being as a demon or monster, such thoughts were worthy of 1,000 deaths. So, Mobius did not dare to look towards the throne. After being handed some sort of horn, the TVA members led by Mobius entered the time door. The look they shared before entering made Mobius sure that all of them were on the same page for what had to be done. As they entered the TVA, Mobius was filled with a sense of disgust. To think that he was aiding a piece of filth by pruning innocent timelines. But no more, as he now had a new grand mission. One that stated with this first step. Mobius made his way to Renslayer's office. He understood Renslayer like the back of his palm and had adored her until recently. That adoration did not last any longer, of course, as such a feeling was worthless when he could be praying for guidance from the Supreme One in that time. Nevertheless, on account of their past friendship, Mobius decided to free Renslayer in the near future as well. Not only her, he would free the entire TVA from the clutches of He Who Remains, and help them reach their rightful place in life by serving the Supreme One as well. Mobius, what happened? What caused that anomaly? She asked. It's this thing. Mobius replied as he handed over the horn to Renslayer. What is this? Is this a horn or a trumpet? Are you sure this is what caused that Nexus event? Positive. You know I would never joke about work. You can check it out yourself. Just as Renslayer was going to analyze the horn, an orange holographic clock with a smiley face appeared out of nowhere. Miss Minute spoke, I'll be taking that, if you would hand it over. The timekeepers want to analyze the cause of this anomaly themselves personally. She stretched out her hand and received the horn from Renslayer before disappearing. Seeing Miss Minutes disappear, Mobius thought that the first step of the plan was completed successfully. Soon he will make sure to complete his mission and bring salvation to the entire TVA. He Who Remains POV. Kong was staring at the little horn placed on the table in front of him as he sat by his desk in the Citadel at the end of time. This little thing had nearly caused all of his plans that he had created since the previous multiversal war with the Council of Kangs. Although his plans were by no means a guaranteed success, he could always try everything all over again. He was He Who Remains after all. Nevertheless, he did not want his plans to get derailed before even enacting them completely. He was so close to achieving positive results this time around. At the cusp of success. Even if he failed, he wanted to know what went wrong so that he could modify his plans for the next cycle. And this little horn handed over by Miss Minutes had nearly cost him an entire cycle's work without achieving any results at all. Upon primary analysis, this horn was not like anything he had seen before. It was almost as if it should not exist in this multiverse at all. Such a discovery blew his mind. He saw new possibilities in this horn. He was sure he could make something beneficial to him out of it. Kong had such confidence as he had been the one to discover the multiverse in every single universe that existed. The horn in itself did not seem to be a powerful artifact, but what attracted Kong was the plethora of possibilities that it might contain. Kong picked up the horn. He was tempted to play with it first. He knew he shouldn't go flailing around such an unknown object, but hey, after the millennia of craziness that he had experienced, could you really blame him? So he blew the horn, and that summoned ugly green monsters in front of him. They were what youngsters would call goblins, he was sure of it. Don't look at him as just a living fossil. Kong probably knew more about Earth's popular culture than all the youngsters did. The goblins seemed stronger than the average human physically, but nothing that good old technology could not handle. He also understood that they were completely loyal to their summoner. That made work easy for him, as now he could study all aspects of the horn in peace. Kong was relieved that he had solved the crisis quickly, and as an added bonus, he had a brand new toy to play around with. Chapter 14, Floor Guardians Meeting. Third-person POV. In the throne room, the Floor Guardians were overwhelmed with confusion at the events that had just occurred. Even two of the brightest minds of Nazarick, who were gifted with high intelligence, were left speechless. They also could not decipher what had just occurred with both their combined intellect. Everything seemed to be moving normally until the humans replied to Lady White's question. Their current location was apparently called Mexico. But what they could not understand, why did Lady White suddenly pale upon hearing the humans' reply and take the series of actions that she did? From using her evil eye skills to sending those humans back, albeit under their control, the Guardians were unable to make sense of the situation without any prior understanding of their situation. An understanding that their lady had certainly gained from the looks of it. Demiurge, do you understand what just happened? I am afraid not, Aura. Why did Lady White suddenly release her fear aura? That was Lady White showing herself as the rightful ruler. Right after Ascension. What a great power Lady White has. The Guardians started discussing amongst themselves for the first time in their entire existence. The topic was, of course, about the Supreme One. It would not come as a surprise that the NPCs of Nazarick can praise their creators continuously for the entire day without ever repeating the same phrase once. In fact, this was what they will be doing during their conversations with other NPCs from now on. Albedo, you have spent the most time with Lady White amongst us. Do you know why she suddenly became so pale and flustered? Demiurge questioned. It was not a secret that Lady White used to converse with the Guardian Overseer for hours during the time when the Supreme Beings started disappearing. While she did visit the rest of them as well, it was in no way comparable to her time shared with Albedo. Perhaps she knew something they did not. I don't know about the exact reason, as she never shared it herself with me, but I did hear something from Lord Mamanga that might be related to her bizarre behavior. What is it? Albedo. Speak quickly. Lord Mamanga mentioned that Lady White had some sort of terminal illness. Perhaps she had a relapse of her symptoms causing her to behave this way. Albedo spoke with a grim voice. How is that possible? Shaltir was the first to question such a statement. That's not true, right, Wani-chan? What? Master has a terminal illness? Impossible. She never mentioned this to me. Sophia reacted most severely to the news that had been dropped on them. She was already envious of the time that Albedo shared with her creator, but such envy did not outweigh her worry for her master's well-being. She was also slightly upset that her master did not share such a news with her in person. Not to mention, a guilty consciousness caused by the happiness she felt at her master's supposed weakness. If this is true, then I can do my job as a guardian even better and protect Master personally, she thought. Albedo, can you explain everything properly? Demiurge inquired once more. Lord Mamanga himself spoke of her terminal illness to the other Supreme Beings in front me. They also said that there is no cure. There is no doubt that this news is true. But she looks fine to me. Mare stuttered and replied. If the Supreme Being said this, then there is no doubt that it's true. The illness afflicting Lady White must be beyond our knowledge and imagination, such that not even the Supreme Beings could cure her. Not to mention we can't even detect her illness. Demiurge spoke to Mare while pressing his glasses and bowing his head. No way. Aura was understandably shocked. The last Supreme Being was silently suffering and doing her best for Nazarick while they could not do anything. They had failed the responsibility that came with the title of Guardian. This is not the time to be filled with regret. The other Supreme Beings have already departed. We have to do our best as guardians and wash away any of our previous sins by working even harder for Lady White. Cocytus slammed his halberd on the floor and spoke. Cocytus is right. We have one last supreme being to serve. We must not make any mistakes this time and find a cure for Lady White as soon as possible. You can spread this news to all the NPCs in Nazarick. But, do not mention this in front of Lady White. Apparently, according to the supreme beings, nobody should speak of this in front of her. Albedo spoke with determination. If Lady White heard their discussions about this illness and took some regretful actions that might be further detrimental to her health, that would be a disaster. Everyone agreed with her. After all, there was no way that a supreme being would show weakness if not for this mysterious illness. They felt their hearts clenched in pain at the thought of their lady silently suffering. They would make sure to cure her so that she could rule them for the rest of eternity. The NPCs would also borrow traits of their creators. As Shiraori became somewhat of a mascot for the guild due to her illness and seemingly innocent behavior, she became their most protected member. Such thoughts were naturally transferred to the NPCs as well, who were already fanatic in their dedication to the supreme beings. I should be on my way now. A supreme being must not be left unattended, especially after the news we just received. Seabass bowed towards them and spoke. Very well, Seabass. If Lady White calls for me, inform me as quickly as possible so that I can meet her. In fact, Albedo wanted to make more excessive remarks about having passionate nights with Lady White, but she forcefully went against her succubus instincts as Lady White is not in the health to entertain such thoughts. She will, however, make sure to win the Supreme One's heart. That was non-negotiable. As you wish. Seabass replied and left for his duties. Now, Albedo. Shouldn't you start to assign us our work? We would not want to report empty-handed to Lady White when she summons us again after all. Demiurge spoke with the smile on his face once more. Yes, you are right, Demiurge. We can continue this conversation later after we have finished all our work. Well, everyone. Chapter 15, The Talk. I felt relaxed as the darkness subsided and I started waking up. Although escapism LV max only worked during my sleep, at this point it was more than I could wish for. My parallel minds were working on plans even during my sleep, of course, but I'll get to that later. As I opened my eyes, what greeted me was of course my pristine white bedroom. Turning my head to the side, I could see Antoma standing by the door. Not surprising really, as this is their duty as maids. Upon seeing me, she immediately bowed. Perhaps, due to being an arachnoid, I felt a sense of kinship with her. As a spider goddess, all spiders could be considered under my reign. Well, as a NPC she was anyway completely loyal to me. And I just realized that due to this whole fiasco I had not eaten anything. Of course, I could not think on an empty stomach, so let's go to the cafeteria. I immediately walked out the door, only to be greeted by Seabass and the Pleiades. I ignored their bowing and walked quickly. It did not take long to reach my destination as the cafeteria was on the same floor. As I entered, all the homunculus maids stopped whatever they were doing and just stared at me as if I was some sort of rare specimen. I know I am their so-called supreme being, but these stares were starting to get painful. Now that I looked closely, the way these homunculus maids were staring at me also seemed pretty weird. I might be mistaken, but it seemed like they were giving me pitiful looks. There were even a few girls who covered their mouths with their hands and had tears in their eyes. Even I felt that this was a bit overdramatic, so I just ignored their stares and sat down by the nearest table. The myconoid, sous-chef, immediately brought all sorts of delicacies for me to devour. This is one of the few good things about this whole transmigration. Some good, fucking food, I thought as I gobbled it up. I did not really care much about my image anymore, as I needed a distraction, and the NPCs won't mind anyway. They'll turn anything negative the supreme beings do into something positive anyway. After I left the labyrinth and we conquered Nazarick, the NPCs were not sentient yet, so I had to cook my own food then. Although better than those filthy monsters, my cooking is not good at all. This is heaven, I thought with my eyes closed. After eating, I was tempted to test if caffeinated coffee will affect me as well. I am technically a spider after all, and it did affect Shiro, so I should be affected as well. But on second thought, I did not, as I have things to deal with right now. I'll test it later. My scientific curiosity was burning. As I got up, all the homunculus maids wished and bid me farewells, as they will never see me again in this lifetime. Oh, they will be seeing me. I was seriously considering moving into the cafeteria. Shaking my head to distract myself from this paradise, I used the ring of Ain's old gown to teleport to the throne room and immediately sat on the throne. It seems my arrival took the Guardians busy with work by surprise, as they immediately got on their knees. Albedo, how long has it been since our last discussion? I wrote. It's been 2 days and 3 hours, my lady, she replied and continued. We have finished all the tasks that you assigned us. I slept for 2 whole days. And it seems she was going to give me documents to look over, but I immediately got a headache upon looking at those stacks of papers. So I decisively delayed working on them. Leave them on the desk in my office. I'll look through them later. They probably won't need any corrections anyway, as I have faith in all your abilities. Which was true. After all, I had read the original light novels, so I knew how adept they were at work. Besides, even if someone like Shaltir messed up, Albedo won't hand over that mess to me. My words got all the floor guardians happy. I could guess what sort of thoughts would be going on in their brains. But now is not the time for this. I need to caution them about the Marvel multiverse quickly. As you may or may not have guessed, I have already obtained a preliminary understanding of our situation. Our current situation does not seem very good. We are in a multiverse called Marvel. Multiverse. Shaltir muttered. I could not fault her for her confusion. The NPCs have probably never heard of a multiverse at all. I used my magecraft to create images to explain it better to them. This is a simplified version of the truth, but the place we are in right now is on planet Earth, in a solar system, in a galaxy called the Milky Way, in the universe. I had the image slowly zoom out to show everything. Think of the universe as a bowl which contains all of this. Now a multiverse has multiple parallel versions of this universe. They could be very similar, like mirror images, or very different. For example, a person in this universe might be king, but in another they could be a beggar. Maybe their race or genders are different. In one they could be human, in another they could be some sort of heteromorph. But the underlying principle of everything in this multiverse is chaos, and nothing is certain. I let them digest what I said before continuing. In this multiverse, we are far from the strongest. There are godlike beings who can destroy all of this with a thought, or create all of this once more. There are beings who can travel across time. There are also some humans who all of you look down on, who are capable of doing the same. Impossible. How can mere humans do this? That statement got the biggest reaction out of them. While the information about the multiverse might come as a shock to them, the biggest shock would of course be that the humans who they thought they could trample on it will suddenly have the power to do the same to them. But this was necessary and was also the easiest way to caution them about Marvel. I have controlled that man named Mobius to infiltrate his organization called the Time Variance Authority. It supposedly protects the proper flow of time, although in truth, this is a scam. Nevertheless, he will get us information from all across time. The remote I took from him also allows us travel through time. I caught their attention again as I started to speak. I wanted them to be weary of Marvel, but not so much that they would not do anything at all. This whole speech was mainly for Albedo and Demiurge, the two brains of Nazarick. Once they had everything figured out and explained it to the rest of the NPCs, we could start putting my plans into motion. I have also stored a lot of information about this multiverse in the Grand Library. Albedo and Demiurge, I grant you full access to the library to read all this information. Once you have finished understanding everything, we can proceed to the next step. I have faith that the two of you can complete this task. The information was obviously the Marvel comics that I copied using Wish Upon the Star. It was for my entertainment, but who knew it would have such a use now? Sasuga Shiro-sama. To already have procured all this information before we even reached here. This, Demiurge will prove himself worthy of this trust. Demiurge spoke with tears visible under his glasses. My lady, don't worry. We will definitely not fail you. Albedo spoke with her head down and wings quivering. Wah. The other guardians sent envious glances towards Albedo and Demiurge. Now I am not sure if my speech had the intended effect or not. Are they really going to be cautious towards the dangers Marvel possesses? They should have heard my underlying message that I am not the omnipotent supreme being they expect me to be in this world, but they are behaving normally. I guess I'll take this as a victory. I'm definitely not in denial. Definitely not. Ha, these troublesome children. Chapter 16, Pandora's Actor. After sighing a few times, I felt it was time to move on to the next order of business. I'll be equipping the floor guardians with world items. World items are nowhere near strong enough to be compared with objects like infinity stones. One of them affects a world at most while the other works on a universal scale. Regardless, there is nothing wrong with being extra prepared. Since I'll have to go to the Treasury, I'll have a talk with Pandora's actor as well. Despite his character, he is also very smart and has useful abilities, so I'll make him read the comics as well. Also, I can also send him off to make my slacker life a reality. Thinking so, I got up from the throne and prepared to leave. As expected, the Guardians started making a fuss when they saw me leaving. Perhaps because I was planning on going alone as quickly as possible, or because I had only been in the throne room for about 10 minutes before I'm leaving again. Sorry kids, but you have deal with an unreliable leader. As their arguments for having someone accompany and protect me even within Nazarick were starting to annoy me a little, I finally said, fine, one or two of you can come along with me. Such a phrase seemed to have sparked a conflict as I did not designate who should accompany me. But I did not care. I was in a bad mood. This was how it would be for the foreseeable future. Yet, it seemed the candidates were decided rather quickly. Maybe as they were afraid I would be displeased that they took a long time to decide. Anyway, the winners were Sophia and Aura. I was truthfully a bit surprised that Albedo did not win in whatever method they used to decide, but chalked it up to the fact that she did not truly want to accompany me. Despite the angry and depressed face she was displaying, I was not Ains after all. I'll change her settings back to normal while she is reading comics. As the other Guardians begrudgingly backed off, I teleported us towards the Treasury. The Treasury was located in a separate spatial plane and could be considered a separate floor in itself. Normally, one would need the rings of Ain's Olgown to enter, but I was an exception as a master of dimensional magecraft. The entrance was a treasure hall that had a limitless ceiling. It contained vast amounts of wealth and gold and luxurious items. I didn't know our guild had this much gold. Aura said, genuinely shocked by the vast display of wealth. This gold is mainly used for resurrection. It is also a distraction for possible invaders. If they see all this gold, many of them won't even try to move further. That is, if they even made it here. There is an item called Blood of Jormungandr that makes the surrounding air highly toxic and prevents thieves from trespassing. I spoke a bit about the design of this place. We flew across the hall and reached the door to the Treasury, which looked like a bottomless pit. Glory to Ain's Olgown. I spoke and a series of words in Latin appeared on the door. I spoke one again, with great sagacity it doth ascend gently from earth to heaven. Again it doth descend to earth, and uniteth in itself the force from things superior and things inferior. And so, we entered the armory. Aura was looking around with keen interest. Her playful nature does complement such behavior. I guess I'll take Aura and Mare to play somewhere when I have time, don't judge me, I'm very busy, unfortunately. Sophia on the other hand did not seem to care much at all. I know her settings well as I wrote them myself and they were taken from my memory of her. I remember inputting possessive behavior into her flavor text to make her similar to the original, but maybe I accidentally created a yandere. There is also no Merizophis here for her to be a yandere, after all. Nothing about him or the Kumo di subplot was mentioned in her flavor text either, so she is fundamentally different from the original Sophia. No, while she is staring at my back very creepily, it is still far off compared to a true yandere like Albedo. She should just be concerned for my safety like other NPCs. At least I think so. I remember that Nazarick has many data crystals remaining and the guild level cap has been lifted, probably as this is not Yggdrasil anymore. Maybe I can try to experiment and create other NPCs in the form of Wrath or Ariel as well later. I can use the administrator skill to achieve this. This was not tested by Ains in the original, as truthfully there was no need for him to do so, but every NPC created is an addition to my strength. As I was lost in my thoughts, we finally made it to the lobby where Pandora's actor was disguised as Ains. "Mamanga-sama!" Aura exclaimed. "No, Aura, that is Pandora's actor. Mamanga's creation. Remove your disguise, Pandora." Pandora removed his disguise and returned to his original form and bowed towards me, followed by a salute in an exaggerated manner. "Welcome to the Treasury, mean-gotten. To what do I owe this visit from one of the great supreme beings herself?" I could see Sophia frowning at his behavior, while Aura may have thought he was funny. Anyway, I tried to defuse the situation quickly. "I came to get world items stored in the Treasury. You may also have heard about our transfer to this world. I have some tasks for you. Firstly, here are items that Mamanga had left behind when he departed. Arrange them properly." I handed many of the items in Ains' inventory to Pandora's actor. Has my creator really passed away? I could sense the sadness in Pandora's actor's voice as he spoke. "I am sorry, but that is the truth. I don't know what else to say, but know that I don't plan to be leaving anytime soon." That may be cold, but I really did not know what to say. I did not understand their dedication to me on a fundamental level. Nor did I have time for sentimental squabbles. "It's okay, mean-gotten. I have had these last 2 days to think over this. At the very least, I have one last supreme being to serve before losing purpose in my life. I will complete the task you assign to the best of my abilities. Please assign me the second task as well." Even I did feel a little sad at this. Mamanga, couldn't you have stayed behind for a couple more minutes? You would have made everyone's life easier. Very well. After arranging Mamanga's items, go to the Grand Library to meet up with Demiurge and Albedo. You can study the information I have stored with them. Once you are finished, I will give you your next task," I ordered. "When es means God's will." He replied again in his signature exaggerated manner and moved on to work. Not before, I gave him my ring of Ains' old gown, of course. I did not want to be attacked by the golems inside. "Now let's head into the mausoleum," I declared. Chapter 17, Mausoleum. The number of world items that Ains' old gown has procured due to my existence has been increased to 15 as opposed to the 11 they had in the original light novel. The mini-world tree is on the 6th floor while its fruit was eaten by me. In addition, we obtained Ahura Mazda, Ouroboros, and also the world item that turns the user into a world enemy known as the Chaos Catalyst. Yes, the same world item that turned a player into a Lord of the Seven Deadly Sins, a boss monster. Originally, after obtaining it, the plan was for Albert to use it. Having both the World Disaster class and becoming a world enemy would make a truly powerful character. Eventually, though, we decided it was not worth it. That player who used it in canon was a world champion but still got ganged up and killed. It could be useful in Marvel. I confess that I did not explicitly try to find and obtain more world items as I felt that it would be overkill for the new world. I somewhat regret my laziness now, but whatever. This also just got me thinking, where did the other players who went to the new world in the canon end up? Did they still go to the new world or come to Marvel as well? Or did they not go anywhere at all? Even if they did end up in Marvel, that is the least of my worries. It would be like adding a little more chaos to an already chaotic world. But this should be investigated as well. Finding out if they are in some corner of this universe, or if they are in this universe at all would be difficult, but that's where Mobius comes into play. He will find all that information for me. As we entered the mausoleum, multiple golden stone statues came into our view. These statues were avatars. "Lady White, is that Bukabukagama-sama over there?" Aura pointed towards a statue depicting a slime. "That is an avatara of Bukabukagama. Avatars are golems who act as guardians of the relics they are equipped with. Since this place is called the mausoleum, does that mean that all the other supreme beings have passed away?" It was Sophia who asked. Aura also turned her attention towards me. It was clear that every NPC wished for their creator to return. I just stared at them before replying. "Yes, that is correct. I am the last member of Ains' old gown remaining. I don't mind if you tell this to everyone. I was being brutally honest here. The other members of the guild will not show up here. They had already terminated their accounts. I held no hopes or illusions of their return like Momonga at all. Even if the NPCs decided to leave or kill themselves, I won't stop them at all. Surviving alone was something I was already used to after my experience in the labyrinth. Call me cold-blooded, but I simply lacked the emotion to empathize with their feelings. Of course, this was not acceptable for the NPCs. No way, Bukabukagama-sama. Aura started crying. Perhaps I was too harsh for a little kid, but the earlier the NPCs know of this and lose any feelings of hope or abandonment, the better. If they did not, oh well. Anyway, I'll make it up to her later. Sophia was also shocked by the news but seemed to fare much better. Maybe because I was still here. I walked towards an empty spot and placed an avatara of Momonga. I quietly equipped it with his robe, rings, etc. His world item still in the cavity of the avatara's chest. I took one last look at the avatara before giving a sigh of regret and turning towards the opposite empty space. I went over and placed an avatara of myself over there. Of course, I did not equip it with my items. Those will only be equipped after I die, which will never happen. I will make sure of it one way or another. Unbeknownst to me, such an action caused deep shock to Aura and Sophia. Both of the floor's guardians were thinking that the last Supreme Beings was making plans for her departure as well, possibly due to the unknown illness. Although they were shaken, neither of them said anything due to the prior discussion during their meeting. That did not mean that they would not spread the news of the death of the Supreme Beings as well as the plan of the Spider Goddess to depart as well to the other NPCs. This was a matter of utmost importance, and all of Nazarick had to do its best to ensure that the last Supreme Being stays. Upon turning around to face the NPCs, I could see Aura trying to stifle a cry while Sophia just had her down. I guess Momonga's account termination has the NPCs even more depressed. I am not good with words, so I just walked over to Aura and patted her head before hugging her. It seemed she was shocked but then started crying again. This continued for a good 5 minutes before she separated. Sophia sent envious glances towards Aura after witnessing our interaction. I reverted to my normal mentality and just ignored her. After picking up the necessary world items, I teleported us back to the throne room. The room had Seabass and the Pleiades present who bowed at my arrival, but was otherwise empty. The Guardians had already left, presumably for whatever work they had. Demiurge, Albedo, and probably Pandora's actor should be reading comics right about now. Seabass and the maid sent questioning looks over to the two lucky floor guardians. Maybe they were confused at the expressions that the two were showing. From their perspective, accompanying a Supreme Being was the happiest time of their lives, but Aura and Sophia did not look happy at all. Aura had just cried while Sophia was displaying a complex blend of sadness and enviousness. I shifted my focus away from them and thought about finishing off one of the important tasks that I was planning on accomplishing. Checking Albedo's settings. I thought, skill, administrator, which opened the menu once again. Upon fiddling around a little bit, I finally opened Albedo's settings and skipped over to the last line, which read she is deeply in love with. And nothing more. The space where Momonga's name should have been was empty. This left me very confused. Momonga did not enter his own name. This Momonga is very different from my memories. But why was Albedo giving me all those glares if she was not in love with Ains? Perhaps this is her true character. All of my previous conjectures about this whole situation were wrong. Most likely the command did not take effect at all as it was incomplete. Anyway, as long as she is not a yandere for someone and tries to sabotage my pursuit of laziness, it's fine. She can't love nothing after all, and there is no being in Nazarick who has an empty space as a name. She also won't love anyone outside Nazarick as she thinks of them as bugs. I guess I'll just leave it as it is for now. It won't do any harm anyway. Chapter 18, Library. Third-person POV. The sound of pages flipping was audible in the Grand Library of Nazarick located on the 10th floor, known as Ashurbanipal. This was obviously due to Albedo, Demiurge, and Pandora's actor reading the books known as comics by the Supreme Beings. The undead skeleton mage, Titus, who was the chief librarian, could be seen carrying more such comics towards the other NPCs. After placing them, he went back to dedicate his time for research. Nonetheless, he had talked extensively with the 3 NPCs who had arrived in the library on the Supreme One's order a few days prior. He also knew about the situation and periodically brought them a set of comics when he felt they had finished their previous stash. Most of the books or scrolls in the library were related to summoning, while some had the purpose of hiding artifacts and items. A few of them were from the personal collections of the Supreme Beings. The comics were one such collection which would normally not be accessible to others if not for receiving permission from the Supreme Beings themselves. Titus had extensive knowledge of pretty much everything in the library and thus also provided them with books about Earth, its knowledge, etc., that would be required for understanding these comics. All except the forbidden section of the library that dealt with books regarding the origins of the Supreme Beings. When he heard that the three Guardians had received full access to the library, he was completely wrought with envy. To be able to gain access to this taboo knowledge was the ultimate prize bestowed by the Supreme One in his mind. Knowledge about their enigmatic creators was scarce after all. Demiurge and Pandora were surprised that such information could be accessed by them, but ultimately, the task at hand overrode all their personal desires to acquire this information. Albedo was desiring an understanding of Lady White so that she could determine how to approach winning her heart, but otherwise did not crave the knowledge of the other Supreme Beings. What does knowledge of those traitors have anything to do with me? She thought. Not that she could voice her dissatisfaction with the Supreme Beings aloud in a tomb full of NPCs who worship them. Regardless, she was delighted when she heard the news from Aura about the passing of the Supreme Beings. Since it was Lady White herself who said this, then it must be true. This fact cut short the efforts required for her plans by a huge margin. She would not have to find and kill the Supreme Beings now after all. She also won't have to risk being branded a traitor by Lady White. While Demiurge and Pandora's actor took the news very negatively, the shock caused by Aura's next words caused them even greater pain. Albedo was also not spared from this pain. Aura went on to describe the events in the mausoleum and how Lady White was also making plans for her departure. This was absolutely not allowed. The other Supreme Beings had already left, they could not afford Lady White leaving as well. To serve the Supreme Beings was their only reason for existence. They had to accelerate their plans to find a cure for her and ensure that she stays and rules them forever, no matter what. Both these pieces of news had already sent deep shocks throughout Nazarick. Every NPC, be they an ordinary maid or the floor guardians themselves, were determined to ensure that Nazarick would not become a veritable tomb due to the departure of all the Supreme Beings. What caused them greater jealousy was Aura's experience of being hugged by the Supreme Being for 5 whole minutes. This was especially true for Albedo. Due to this, they buried themselves in work and digested all the information with even greater zeal than before. They had already read what the library had to offer on Earth. Demiurge was planning on gaining permission to incorporate this field called science to strengthen Nazarick as well. They had also gained an in-depth understanding of the multiverse talked about by Lady White. Moving on, they had read a few of this books called comics that used pictorial representation for storytelling. They now also had an understanding of why Lady White said that the underlying principle of everything is chaos in this multiverse. It seemed that the common rule and understanding that strength dictates everything was ignored in quite a few instances. The plethora of godlike beings who were defeated by those much weaker than them was incomprehensible. This planet, Earth, also seemed to be the center of everything happening in the multiverse, and the heroes and villains were always at center stage in one form or another. There were also some heroes who acted in a gray area known as anti-heroes. One example was a psychopath known as Deadpool. In one comic, he supposedly killed every strong being in his universe before going on to kill the universe's creator as well. This was incomprehensible to them. A creation killing its own creator. Such a creation had no reason to exit according to the NPCs. Such a world was too dangerous for the seriously ill Supreme Being to be present in. This was the conclusion they made upon reviewing this information. Despite what Lady White herself said, they had no doubts about the Supreme Being's almighty powers. The only reason that a Supreme Being would not be able to defeat these people would be due to illness. And due to this, despite the danger, the NPCs were drawn to the opportunities this multiverse offered. From divine artifacts like infinity stones to medicines, everything imaginable was available here. And they would make sure to get all of this and offer it to the Lady White. After all, everything the world had to offer belonged to the Supreme One. They just had to find it. They also deeply understood the potential that time travel held and were in awe of Lady White's foresight in planting Mobius as a spy. Not to mention obtaining these comics before even coming to this world. Speaking of the comics, some of the characters mentioned infuriated them. Such as the inheritors who hunt the so-called spider totems. Since these vermin would eventually try to hunt the spider goddess if this was true, they would ensure to them to the deepest depths of hell. As for these spider totems who committed blasphemy by taking the rightful title of the spider goddess, they would also share an equally grim fate. Not to mention, all these godly pantheons. Such as the Norse and multiple other deities whose religions and myths will soon be spreading on this earth that was the center stage of the multiverse. All these false gods had to be purged as well, and all their wealth and power given to Lady White. Everyone had to praise the Supreme One's name. All of this information would be shared with the other NPCs. The three most intelligent creations of the Supreme Beings were already making plans based on the information they had. They would eventually defeat all the cosmic entities, cure Lady White, and offer up this entire multiverse to her. Chapter 19, Missions. Ha ha ha, this is the life I want, I thought as I rolled around on my bed with no care about my image. I had already sent the maids outside the room under the pretext of doing something of utmost importance. Too bad this happiness is short-lived. I had received a message from Albedo that they had finished reviewing the comics. I asked them to spread the information to the NPCs before having a discussion with me so that I could extend my free time as much as possible. These past few days have been truly blissful, but I have to attend the meeting today and assign work to the NPCs. I asked Titus to conduct tests on how different magic and its mechanisms work in Marvel and then conduct experiments to manufacture scrolls. Since I have not mentioned conquering the world or anything like that, Demiurge should not get any strange ideas like he did in Overlord. Conquering this world is the definition of craziness, and not to mention work. So I was careful in whatever I spoke with the NPCs, and looking back, I have definitely not said anything that will cause their brains to come up with such thoughts. All I wish for is good food and sleep for all eternity. Getting up from my bed, I let Sixus, who was the maid in charge of my care today, inside to clean up the room, and then teleported to the throne room. All the guardians were present. Seabass, the Pleiades, and some area guardians were present as well. Looking at the crowd, I hid my social anxiety and spoke. I assume that all of you have an understanding of our situation now. Seeing all of them nodding, I continued. Firstly, I have asked Titus to work on maintaining a stable supply of scrolls. Demiurge, you can work on finding materials for this in your spare time. As you command, Lady White. May I have the permission to research and incorporate scientific technology to strengthen Nazarick as well? Researching science and technology. Did he have this idea after reading the comics? It's not a bad idea. Science and magic are basically prevalent throughout Marvel Comics. Incorporating science into our strength would allow us to deal with enemies who specialize in technology as well. There should presumably be no drawbacks from this proposal. Considering it was Demiurge who proposed this after reviewing the information in the comics, the benefits had to outweigh any of the costs. So I said, very well, you can set up your own research laboratory to conduct any experimentation you need to. Whether it be for magic or science or something else entirely, Nazarick will support this research. You can ask for help from any of the NPCs required as well. Thank you for accepting this proposal. He replied while grinning maliciously. I knew he had a zeal for experimentation from reading the novels, but did science allure him so much? Well, whatever. It won't get in the way of my pursuit of laziness. I suddenly remembered about something he could research. So I spoke. Demiurge, you have read about the comics, so you know about the celestial progenitor and aspirin scrub, right? Yes, of course. I would like you to eventually conduct research so that Nazarick's inhabitants can gain immunity to the Horde. I remember reading that superpowered humans of Earth can cancel out the Horde's powers. If we can cancel out the Horde and gain the remains of the progenitor and scrub, then some of my plans can be accelerated. You can deny this task as it is very dangerous. I will accomplish this task without fail, my lady. He spoke with his head bowed down. I'm still a little worried as the Horde is very dangerous. Devise some contingency plans before actually conducting research. I don't want to lose one of the most important guardians right after coming to this world. Worry was clearly evident on my face. If something happens to Demiurge, my slacker life might as well die. He has to work harder for me for a long time to come. I'll review if he can handle this task before allowing him to conduct research. To care about insignificant servants such as myself. Demiurge was moved to tears. So were some of the other NPCs. Putting their weird feelings aside, I turned towards Pandora's actor. I then wrote. Within the next year, Caius of Lace Demon will defeat the Triumvirate to become the next and last Sorcerer Supreme to wield all three eyes of Agamotto. I want you to disguise yourself as a positive karma human and join Camartage. Learn all the knowledge of sorcery and mystic arts that you can and send it back to Nazarick. I already understood two systems of magic. The magecraft or conjuring that was there in Kumo di Soji Nani Ka and the tier system of magic in Yggdrasil. Although the number of Yggdrasil's magic spells that I can cast is not as high as Mamanga, I can learn more magic without system restrictions pretty quickly. If I get my hands on more types of magic, I can create a brand new and more versatile system of magic eventually. The same goes for the rest of you. If you ever come across magical knowledge from this world, then try to bring it back as long as it does not cause any issues down the line. Yes, Lady White. They all shouted. I would have liked if Pandora became the Sorcerer Supreme as well so that we can avoid any danger or interference from the sorcerers in the future, but that was far too risky. Not to mention he might directly get caught upon entering Camartage because they detected something was off about him. This whole move is a gambit. I have only read a few comics and watched some of the movies. I don't know how exactly things will go down if I played this move. Maybe in hindsight I would be overthinking, but right now my insecurities were stabbing at me. So I said. I will be honest with you, Pandora's actor. Sending you on this task is a gamble. It's great if it works out, but it will be disastrous if it does not. I will use the administrator skill to try ensure that nothing seems off, but just in case, get a tempad from Mobius to escape if everything goes off the rail. I will also be keeping an eye on you. Since you are handing this task over to me, it just shows the trust you have in me. I will do my best to complete the task, mean gotten. While he spoke with the same energy as before, luckily, he did not make any weird poses in front of everyone. I should also check out what's happening outside personally once so that I have a basic idea about the world before handing out more tasks. I said in deep thought, which accidentally caused an uproar. No, please don't go outside. It is far too dangerous. If you have to go, at least take 4 guardians with you. Lady White, it is much better to stay in Nazarick. What happened all of a sudden? Chapter 20, Weaving Time. Why are these kids being so troublesome again? Why do I need 4 guardians to leave Nazarick? They let Ains travel around with just Narbril from the Pleiades, so I should be able to do the same. It will be easier to escape alone in case of danger, but they will definitely not allow me to go out alone. Is it because they read about Marvel so they are afraid of everything outside? Let's just try my luck once. Going outside at least once is non-negotiable, and I don't think 4 guardians are necessary. In fact, I thought about going alone. I conveyed with a serious face. I think I speak for all of us, but we absolutely cannot allow the last supreme being to go out alone. If you leave alone, we will risk insubordination and follow you in secret even if you don't want us to. We will then face any punishment you deem necessary. Albedo spoke up with a slightly crazy or desperate look on her face. I could see the other denizens of Nazarick nodding their heads. I just stared at them for a few seconds before sighing and replying that I will take a guardian with me. This was also met with resistance before we settled on taking 2 guardians with me. Do they think I am going to leave Nazarick permanently or something? That's ridiculous. Nazarick is heaven incarnate for me. Moving on, I have to shift the topic before they start having more troublesome ideas. There is one more plan that I want to try out. Though there are aspects that might not work, it is worth trying out. So I used the chat software once more. Albedo, this next order is for you to carry out. You will oversee this entire operation. Yes, my lady. I want you to use the tempad to place the eggs I create using my egg-laying skill in different points in time in safer areas at that period of time. These areas will be called temporal sanctuaries or safe zones. You can send the Horo Nia at first along with shadow demons attached to them and have them stationed in these safe zones. Then increase the workforce dedicated to them slowly, such as golems and undead. The idea is to construct safe havens at different points in time or different timelines altogether. I can go and chill in these safe zones whenever I want to. I can go sleep as well as have food and delicacies from different time periods. Of course, that is not the most important reason, even if it is my major personal consideration. As you know, the multiverse is chaotic. These temporal sanctuaries might help us rebuild much more easily in case some enemy defeats us. Since Nazarick is in my pocket dimension, all I will have to do is go to these pre-planned points in time and set up everything once more. I understand, my lady. But why do you wish to place eggs you create in these sanctuaries as well? Well, it's to conduct a test as well as a contingency plan and security measure, I replied. Contingency plan? Yes. I had prepared this method much earlier but never had to use it. In case I am killed, I can transfer my parallel minds to the egg and revive once more. Of course, this method was designed to work at the exact same time as I died. What I want to try to experiment is the concept of time-displaced resurrection eggs. Do you mean? Demiurge seemed genuinely surprised. So did Albedo and Pandora's actor, but the other NPCs did not seem to understand what I was hinting at. As in, if I am killed today, then I will automatically revive inside one of these eggs scattered across time. Naturally, this might not work. I would not be surprised if it did not. But if it did, it would be an ace in the hole I can play in any future battles. Such as tricking an enemy into killing me before reviving and attacking secretly, or simply to save my life. Intentions. Quickly. What Demiurge is trying to say is that we have to conquer this multiverse, gather all its treasures, heal Lady White and offer up everything to her. Lady White will be the only true god of this multiverse, as it should be. Any objections? Albedo turned around and spoke seriously, along with a hint of murder in her eyes in case someone says otherwise. Of course, nothing like this happened. Everyone wholeheartedly agreed with what they just heard. Observing their reaction with satisfaction, Albedo shouted, "All hail Lady White! All hail Lady White! All hail the Supreme One! All hail Lady White! All hail the Supreme One!" The chorus of chants filled up the throne room. Chapter 28, Information. Mobius POV. Mobius walked into the library of the TVA with multiple files in his hand. While he was doing the missions assigned by the TVA and stopping the so-called Nexus events, he was also gathering the information the Supreme Being required. The information was about multiple timelines, events that occurred in the sacred timeline, as well as information about science and technology gathered by the TVA. This was just the latest batch of files he had borrowed. The files borrowed by him earlier had been copied and stored by him, the originals being returned. The other members who had been saved by the Supreme Being along with him were also borrowing and copying these files whenever they got the opportunity. It was weird that such a technologically advanced organization used physical files to record and store information. But that was how it had always been since every TVA member could remember. Technically, this worked in their favor as the holy sanctuary of the Supreme Being was more magically oriented, at least from what he had seen. They were likely used to recording information on paper instead of recording it digitally. If this pattern continued, the TVA was bound to get suspicious. But Mobius did not have a choice. The Supreme Being was awaiting him deliver this information as soon as possible. The best option would have been to convert and save the librarian so that they could obtain this information easily, but the library was one of the most secure places of the TVA. Information was power. This was something the TVA obviously understood very well. After understanding the truth about the TVA and He Who Remains, Mobius now knew exactly why this was so. After all, He Who Remains was a scientist. Anyway, the point was that the library was the most watched place in the TVA and it was not easy to play tricks here. He did not know when the librarian would exit the library either. In fact, he had never even seen the librarian leave the library, making him question if she was really a normal human being she appeared to be. And so, saving the librarian will have to happen much later. The files that were copied were stored by the small spider clones. Mobius had found out that the spider clone attached to his mind could replicate. The same was true for the other saved members as well. These replicated clones could store the files as well as save other TVA members by invading their minds. Upon his inspection, they seemed to have minimum autonomy and would only truly become active if and when the Supreme One cast her gaze on us. Since she was not bothering to do so, Mobius felt that the Supreme One had approved his action of wanting to save the TVA. She probably knew what he was planning on doing before he even left the holy sanctuary of the supreme beings. Mobius was overseeing the entire conversion process. One day the TVA would be free of restraints and wholeheartedly worship the Supreme One. He could almost witness this glorious future. For now though, that was a distant fantasy. Caution was required in every move they made. By now, around 70 members had been converted. While that might sound like a sizable number of people, considering the size and scale of the TVA, that was nothing. Adding on the danger of being detected during inspections, the risk of undertaking the conversion process was immense. A single converted member being detected might lead to everything cascading out of control, and all of their hard work until now would go down the drains. Luckily the spider clones had some sort of magic on them that caused them to remain undetected. As expected of the Supreme One. Praise the goddess. Reaching the librarian, Mobius handed over the files. The librarian just gave a dubious stare, but ultimately said nothing. As expected, it seemed that such frequent borrowing of files was starting to cause suspicions, but they were not that serious yet. That would not matter for much longer as his mission was due to end today. He was only worried now, if the Supreme One would be satisfied by the meager amount of information they had collected until now. Turning around, Mobius had already left the library, not wanting to waste any more time in order to deliver the results of their hard work. He quickly used the tempad to open a time door and walk through it. Upon entering the jungle where he had been earlier, nostalgia swept over him. Upon looking forward, he could see Hunter B-15 waiting. She quickly walked up to him and handed all the files collected by the saved members to him after the spider clone handed them to her. While the huge cluster of files looked like a sizable amount, it was merely a drop in the bucket compared to all the information recorded in the TVA. The spider clone that Mobius held in his palm used space magic to store all the files. He then looked towards Hunter B-15 and held both palms together with fingers extended and touching. He then used the fingers to mimic pulling threads of fate from one hand to the other, symbolizing the Supreme One's control over their destinies, and said, "May Lady White weave your fate. May the threads of destiny be spun by Lady White," replied Hunter B-15 before opening a time door and leaving the scene. These were just some of the multiple impromptu greetings that the saved members created in order to show their reverence and loyalty to the spider goddess. Mobius also turned around, walked down the familiar path until he reached the point where he had met the servants of the Supreme Being the previous time he had been here. Immediately upon reaching that exact location, a wormhole opened in the air, acting as a gate which led to the land of the Supreme Beings. Before he could walk into this gate, the old butler he had seen when he had come here the previous time walked out of it. "Pardon me, but you do not have the permission to enter. Please hand over the information you have collected and head back. Your immediate mission is concluded for now. Lady White will let you know of any other missions she may want to appoint. In the meantime, you can keep collecting information in case Lady White asks for it again." The old butler spoke in a calm manner. Although Mobius was a bit disappointed, there was nothing he could do. He handed the spider clone which had all the stored files to the butler and watched as it crawled onto his shoulder. Taking one last look, he opened the time door and left the way he had come. Much the same as the butler walked back into the wormhole. Chapter 29, In the Sanctuary of Obsession. Albedo POV. Within a room on the 10th floor of Nazarick, Albedo was lying on a bed covered with dolls and plushies of Shiraori that she had made herself. Some of them were life-size while others were smaller. Some of them were in her different forms, such as the Arachne form or her human form. This was the dressing room in Albedo's personal quarters. Lady White had assigned this room to her as her personal space. Everyone was banned from entering this room as she did not want others to see the flag of Ain's old gown representing the Supreme Beings, desecrated on the ground. The flag that should have been on the wall was replaced by the flag of the one true ruler of Nazarick, Lady White. She had just finished the books titled Overlord that were given to her by Lady White, while Seabass was making the required preparations to carry out the operation of creating time sanctuaries. Her first thought upon reading the books could be summarized with the word repulsive. The whole series of events described in the book was repulsive. First and foremost, that traitor was ruling Nazarick. Secondly, Lady White had already passed away in this alternate universe. Her own creator had originally designated her to be slut. This just furled her disgust for him. Luckily, Momonga did one good thing and removed that line so she could remain faithful to Lady White. If not, perhaps she would be running after those human insects. The Albedo of that universe did nothing to avenge her beloved and bring her back to life but meekly and subserviently served that skeleton. Such a stain could not be allowed to exist. She would eventually have to find a way to go to that alternate universe and knock some sense into her counterpart. The world their version of Nazarick had traveled to, named the New World, was a significantly low-powered world. Despite this, all of them were flopping around instead of swiftly conquering it. Lady White's plan for this multiverse was a massive undertaking, the likes of which could never be compared to the plans Momonga made for the New World. She also understood that the Supreme Beings abandoning Nazarick was the norm no matter which alternate universe they were in. That Momonga would likely have abandoned Nazarick there as well, if not for the untimely passing of Lady White. Those faults aside, there were the low-leveled mistakes the other guardians and denizens of Nazarick made. If nothing else happened, such errors might have been committed while carrying out Lady White's plans as well. Seabass fell in love with a lowly human. And for that human, he jeopardized Nazarick's plans. What if he committed such stupid acts while carrying out Lady White's orders in this much more dangerous Marvel multiverse? Cocytus lost the war against those weak lizards. Granted, Momonga was a traitor, but he had to go through the trouble of personally correcting Cocytus's stupid mistakes. Albedo would absolutely not allow Lady White's glory to be stained just so she could remind Cocytus of the error in his ways. And lastly, Shaltir. Oh, she had so much to ramble on about that lamprey. She allowed an old and weak woman to brainwash her because of her carelessness and caused Momonga to fight her in person while putting himself in possible danger. While such dangers did not exist, the fact remained that Shaltir had committed the gravest sin as a guardian. If she behaved the same way here and got brainwashed again, Lady White might also endanger herself to battle Shaltir given her merciful and kind temperament. She could not allow Lady White, who was already seriously ill, to endanger herself for the NPC's sake. In that sense, Demiurge was the most satisfactory of all the guardians. No wonder, Lady White showed Demiurge explicit trust and even entrusted him with a ring of Ain's old gown. He had already shown enough exploits to win her trust in that universe. One of those pathetic humans named Brain Unglaus also became slightly stronger and cut off Shaltir's nails. She was definitely gloating about this to Shaltir right after giving her the scolding of her lifetime. Truthfully, she might even want to execute Shaltir, but Lady White would definitely not allow that. Adding on that she had not yet committed such sins, she could let Shaltir off the hook. Hopefully, all the NPCs have read and understood their mistakes, or she will have to correct them in person. And at that time, she won't be so kind to them. Lady White's safety was at stake after all. Putting the books aside, Albedo wrapped her hand around a Shiraori doll and started breathing heavily. As she thought about the contents of the book, she knew that Shaltir would definitely also be making plans to win Lady White's love. As the book had put it, she was a walking dictionary of fetishes. She had aimed for Momonga in that alternate universe, it's not a stretch that she would be aiming for Lady White over here. She also stated that she had slept with several women, so Lamprey was definitely aiming for her Lady White. She had to accelerate her plans quickly and obtain a ring as well. As she allowed Albedo to guard her in person, Lady White had to have some level of trust in her as well. Despite this, she had not obtained a ring, which indicated that she had some flaw that had prevented Lady White from doing so until now. She would carry out the operation entrusted to her perfectly and ask for a ring as a reward. This would only be step 1 in her plans. She also could not afford to remain the virgin succubus as she had in that alternate universe anymore. She would be considered ashamed to the word succubus if that were so. Ah. Lady White, do you know how much I have to go against my instincts to keep myself pure for you? You should. Seabass had messaged her. Didn't she tell him already to not disturb her private time unless it was something important? What is it, Seabass? She replied. Pardon my intrusion, but that human, Mobius, has brought the files from the TVA that Lady White requested. Should I bring them to your quarters? Have the files been delivered? In that case, there was no time to waste. She had to excel in this mission. No need for that, Seabass. We will meet in the throne room. She got up and tidied herself, just in case. If she ran into Lady White along the way, she did not want to present herself with an unsightly appearance. She looked towards her own personal sanctuary that took quite a bit of effort to create. She was also in the process of making clothes of all sizes for her future children. As the highest-level succubus, conceiving children with the same sex was not an impossibility for her. Albedo replied, trying not to drown in her fantasies about her bright future. Chapter 30, Constructing Time Sanctuaries. Albedo POV. It had been quite a bit of time since Albedo had arrived in the throne room and started reviewing all the information that Mobius had delivered. She was disappointed at the pitiful amount of information that had been gathered by Mobius, but then again, she did not have any great expectations for him. This information would just act as a guideline, of course. Once the sanctuary started being constructed, the timelines would go into disarray and the butterfly effect will immediately take place. The information might as well be rendered useless by that point. Lady White was going to make sure to bless all the forces being dispatched across the timeline so that they could remain undetected unless someone viewed them with their own eyes. Unless they were extremely powerful like the cosmic entities, no one could track back the chaos to them. The sheer scale of the operation made it unsurprising that the logistics involved were immensely complex. For instance, the necessary quantity of forces required to implement the plan itself. Lady White had allowed golems and undead to be used for this purpose. This reduced the difficulty of the task as undead and golems did not require to rest or eat. They were perfect for cheap labor. Golems were used as a common means of transportation. Additionally, golems will never suffer from fatigue or even the ravages of time, and thus, they are treasured as guardians and laborers. However, the process of making golems is rather difficult to perform. Their production takes considerable time, effort, and cost. Even the weakest ones would require a significant amount of gold coins to create. The pre-created golems on the 6th floor would be used for this purpose. But as their quantity was limited, only a few could be allocated to the creation of each sanctuary. That left the undead as the main force for the construction. Undead creation was rather easy. The overlords that guard the Grand Library of Nazarick led by Titus will be in charge of undead creation. The issue here was that they did not have enough dead bodies to revive as undead. As pointed out even in the Overlord light novels, the rules of the New World differed from Yggdrasil. The same was true for the Marvel multiverse. They needed dead bodies as a medium to revive as undead. This much had been confirmed by one of Titus's experiments. While the multiple alien races had not been tested to see if they could be revived as undead, humans could definitely be revived as undead as of the experiments conducted until now. After a discussion with Demiurge, the conclusion that both of them came to was that they should not harvest dead bodies from their own timeline. The limited amount of living beings in this time period was one of the reasons, but there was something more important. It was in their best interest to reduce the chaos in their own timeline as much as possible until other plans were initiated so that they did not lose the element of surprise. As they planned to conquer the multiverse, such a time would definitely arrive. So, Albedo would send the Horonia and Shadow Demons first to those timelines as Lady White ordered and clandestinely harvest dead bodies from these timelines to revive them as undead. As the chaos that would ensue in the multiverse will be immense, such small levels of genocide would likely go unnoticed. Albedo had to review information to select timelines and different points in time that were not only rather safe but would allow for such attacks to take place unnoticed. Ultimately, the Horonia would be brought back to Nazarick after the plan was successfully executed, leaving only the summoned undead and golems stationed at the time sanctuaries. This plan had given Demiurge an even greater idea. Inspired by his other self, Demiurge thought that perhaps acting as Jaldabaoth on an even greater scale had potential. Directing and acting in a self-directed play appealed to him immensely. As Albedo had read the Overlord books, she could also see the merit in the as-of-yet undefined plan to act as a scourge across the multiverse. Definitely, it was very difficult and would require lots of planning to make it possible. But Albedo and Demiurge could already see glimpses of the required path they had to take to make their vision a reality. Lady White's actions as well as the multiple plans they had thought up after reading the comics were slowly coming together as pieces of a larger puzzle. After reading through the documents, Albedo had already decided on what had to be done. Now she was waiting for Seabass to finish the preparations and to meet up with Demiurge at the pre-planned location. His help would be necessary for the next step. Albedo moved towards the 6th floor of Nazarick. This was the floor they had chosen due to the massive open spaces that it held. It was not long before she reached the Colosseum and saw Demiurge accompanying Aura and Mare. Seabass also arrived not long after with a huge cluster of Horonia in tow. They were the ones who would be going to the different timelines. As the twins were playing with the spiders, Albedo heard Demiurge speak not long after. Albedo, should we begin? It's best not to waste any more time. I also have to go to survey the spell Lady White used and inspect the situation of the Olmec settlement. You are right, Demiurge. Let's not waste any more time. You can begin. Albedo replied. Demiurge raised his hand and spoke, mass summon, shadow demon. A large number of shadow demons arose and started fusing into the shadows of the spider babies, as Lady White called them. Albedo then used the tempad and operated it according to the instructions Mobius provided to open multiple time doors with coordinates and time periods already entered into them. Lady White had already talked with the spiders and they knew what to do. Albedo had also talked about the specifics of the plans. She would after all be overseeing the entire operation. After all the shadow demons fused with the spider shadows, the sound of the spider babies could be heard. For Mother. For Master. It was destined to be a day of chaos. Chapter 31, Threads of Worship. Demiurge POV. As the shadow demons were surveying the area of effect of the spell, Demiurge was lost in thought. Albedo had already initiated the plan to create time sanctuaries, and their discussion had ignited a spark of inspiration within him as well. Some of the humans that would be hunted down in the alternate timelines in order to create undead would be given to him for his research as well. Of course, Demiurge had read the Overlord novels given to him. While he did have certain dissatisfactions about their alternate selves, they were not very deep. At the very least, he was happy that his alternate self did not screw up badly. As proof of that, Lady White was giving an equivalent amount of trust in him. Perhaps after viewing the actions of the alter Demiurge, she had the same expectations of him. He could not let that trust down, starting from the missions assigned to him. While he was indeed furious at Shaltyr's action at first, it was not their version of Shaltyr who committed such a grave sin. At the very least, she should be able to learn from those mistakes and not repeat them again. As for Seabass, he honestly had no expectations in that oath. In all likelihood, he was going to interfere with Lady White's plans in the name of enacting justice. Demiurge planned to keep an eye on Seabass so that any damage done could be prevented early on. The multiverse was no joke after all. Lord Momanga's thoughts were as elusive as anticipated. It brought a sense of fortune to Demiurge that he could delve into the musings of a supreme being. It reminded him of the vast gap that separated his intellect from the supreme beings. Lady White, too, displayed tactical prowess evident in her intricate plans. This wasn't surprising for a supreme being of her caliber. With a turn, Demiurge's attention shifted to the events unfolding within the Olmec settlement. As he was given charge of this settlement, albeit temporarily, he would make sure to raise this settlement to greater heights. He was just beginning his study of science and technology. While the information Mobius provided significantly enhanced his understanding, merging the advantages of technology and magic during the reconstruction of this settlement would demand additional time. Given his rather profound knowledge of magic, his initial focus would be on introducing magical adaptations. Rather than that, he had to first elevate these humans to a level worthy of being the worshippers of the Supreme One. Until now, their knowledge of her magnificence had merely grazed the surface, primarily through the stories told by the spiders. His thoughts were interrupted by the Shadow's demons bringing him the information they had gathered. The ice is visible until where the volcanic eruptions first took place. That is a pretty large area of effect. But why did it stop at that point instead of expanding continuously like Lord Momanga's spell in the New World? Is it because Lord Momanga used the spell on a water body while Lady White used it to freeze lava? It's an intriguing prospect. Demiurge put aside his thoughts as he would tell his findings to Lady White after he returned to Nazarick anyway. He walked into the Olmec settlement and found a girl dressed in white robes kneeling in front of the spider babies in the settlement. This was Nia, the apostle appointed by Lady White. The rest of the Olmecs were behind her kneeling down as well. There were multiple offerings present in front of them such as fruits and meat. Now, everyone. Let's thank divine beasts summoned by the goddess for her grace and mercy. May Lady White weave the threads of fate. May Lady White weave the threads of fate. May Lady White weave the threads of fate. Apparently, the Olmecs had come to consider the spider babies as divine beasts and started worshipping them as a symbol for Lady White. Demiurge was not displeased by this. In his opinion, such worship was expected of everyone. The fact was that the Horo Nia were created by Lady White. Worshipping them as the children of Lady White made sense for the Olmecs. In fact, he was a little surprised that he did not find any half-witted fool who would try to go against Lady White. These humans truly seemed sincere in their worship. As an archdemon blessed with high intelligence, recognizing the truth from lies was as easy as breathing for him. At the very least, these humans show some promise, he thought. The eyes of the spider babies glowed red as they replied. The world will end. The only one who can save everything is Mother. Only Master can save everyone. Only Mother. While he agreed with everything they said, he had heard of the truth regarding the spider babies from Lady White long ago. Apparently, they were mentally like children and loved to show off by acting cool on the outside while they were laughing crazily on the inside. That aside, he thought about the phrase, "May Lady White weave the threads of fate," spoken by the humans. They did not use such phrases in Nazarick where merit mattered more than mere words. If not, any NPC would have been able to praise the supreme beings for days without stopping. Regardless, he understood the significance of such phrases while spreading Lady White's religion. Demiurge was also in the process of developing standardized sacred texts, holy books, symbols, and rituals for the future religion he intended to propagate. Looking at the Apostle Nia, he planned to give her appropriate training so she would befit the word apostle. While he had heard from Albedo that Lady White intended to bestow and awaken powers for Nia, he did not know if she planned to make her an immortal human or have the position of the spider priestess passed down after her death. While the Olmecs were engrossed in discussions regarding a potential pilgrimage to Lady White's revered sanctuaries, Demiurge's thoughts shifted to the Mayans. The Mayans did not have a sophisticated civilization yet. They would have only risen to prominence after the fall of the Olmecs as the next great Mesoamerican civilization. He had intentions to initiate a campaign against the Mayans, fervently propagating the faith of the Supreme One, a venture that would ultimately culminate in the annihilation of the Mayan gods. Worshippers were connected to the entity they worshipped through their devotion and faith, forming a thread-like network of spiritual connections. Just as threads are woven together to create fabric, weaving these different threads of worship together was his job. Chapter 32, The End of the Beginning. Shiraori POV. It has been a couple of weeks since Albedo initiated the plan to create time sanctuaries and Demiurge surveyed my spell. During this time, I have been learning more Yggdrasil magic beyond the spell limit of 300 spells. As a true magic genius, understanding the workings of magic on my own was pretty easy, unlike Ain's. That said, I have only been learning some lower-tier spells first. Speaking of super-tier spells, the results of Demiurge's survey have brought up the need to test out other super-tier magic. As the results could vary by a variety of factors, it's best to test those spells now to understand all their parameters. Ultimately, I did not want to make assumptions about a spell's effectiveness and get caught off guard while fighting someone strong. So I planned to go to an alternate timeline where one of the less important sanctuaries is being built to test out the spells. I could have a look at the sanctuaries while also having fun destroying stuff. I better bring Aura and Mare with me as well. I did have the thought of bringing those two to play earlier, so why not now? I also reviewed Albedo's settings once more before Mobius had delivered the information, and Albedo began earnestly working on the construction of the time sanctuaries. I did this while I was talking about plans to carry out the operation with her. Upon reconsideration, I chose to completely remove the line, "She is deeply in love with," from her settings, just to err on the side of caution. I did this right in front of Albedo to check if there were any issues, if at all. But there were no major changes in her behavior at all. As I had expected, the command for that incomplete line did not even take effect. Well, if there was something that could be considered a change in her behavior, it would be that for some reason she was becoming slightly more clingy than before and staring at me with those deep unnerving stares. I asked her if there were any issues just to be sure, but she said that nothing was wrong at all. She even said that her plans were going beautifully. When I asked her if she meant the plans for the sanctuaries, she just stared at me for a while before saying yes. I had a vague sense that something might be amiss, but her settings appeared normal, and she hadn't mentioned anything being abnormal when I asked her. Despite this, a faint unease continued to linger in my heart. Perhaps being in the Marvel multiverse was still making me paranoid. As evidenced by the fact that I did not sense anything wrong with Albedo the multiple times I had met her after that. Regardless, I also viewed the settings of all the NPCs after that. They were pretty much the same as what they appeared to be in the original series. There were no major problems on that front. I was delighted to see that all the NPCs had learned of their counterparts' mistakes. Especially Shaltir, who became a weeping mess upon reading the issues she caused before asking for punishments. Ultimately, I managed to convince her that punishments were not necessary as she had not done anything wrong yet. Upon hearing this, she promised to become better than her counterpart version while being slightly disappointed that she would not be punished. At the very least, I can assign tasks to Shaltir with more confidence now. She would not dare to mess us so badly in front of the Supreme Beings twice after all. With all that said, I started making my way toward the 6th floor to invite Aura and Mare. The other Guardians had already relented to my orders to visit the alternate timelines after finding out I will be taking Aura and Mare with me. The fact that Nazarick resided within my pocket dimension was also a compelling reason, I suppose. Well, let's get a start on this trip. Third-person POV. The stands in the Colosseum were noticeably emptier than earlier. This was due to the fact that the golems had been deployed elsewhere. But the Guardians of the 6th floor of Nazarick were not seen anywhere in the Colosseum. They were instead playing around in the vast stretches of forests created by the Supreme Beings for this floor. It was undeniable that the magnificence of the 6th floor was beyond imagination. The older sister Aura was running around playing with her pets while the younger brother Mare was tending to the world tree. As a druid, this was his specialty, and the important job of handling the world item was given to him. Each of the leaves from the original world tree was said to be the symbolic representation of all the 9 worlds and 200 world items which were existential to Yggdrasil. After the devourer of the 9 worlds had eaten multiple leaves of the world tree, only 9 had remained which had their namesake from the Norse myth. It was unknown how this currently juvenile world tree would develop, as it had only 8 leaves at present. The twin guardians' business was interrupted by the arrival of their beloved Supreme Being. They immediately bowed towards her as Aura said, "Welcome to the floor we guard, Lady White." Welcome to our floor." Mare also spoke after her. "I will be going on a trip to an alternate timeline where a time sanctuary is being built. Would both of you like to accompany me?" The Supreme Being spoke while placing her hands on their head. "Of course, we would be delighted to accompany you. You won't have to worry about any danger with us guarding you." Aura spoke with a delighted voice. Guarding the last Supreme Being while going on a trip was a dream come true for her. Same with me. I would also like to accompany you. Mare also spoke nervously, but the joy in his voice could not be hidden. "Well, I'm glad. Let's get going then," the Supreme Being announced and turned around as the twin guardians happily followed after her. Unfortunately, no one realized that after their departure, the 9th leaf of the world tree had sprouted. With the emergence of this final leaf, a brief mystical phenomenon occurred, lasting for a couple of seconds before returning to normal. It served as a sign of the impending tumultuous events. Chapter 33, Webs of Ruin. Third-person POV. In a time long past, nestled within the serene landscapes of ancient Greece, there stood a small and humble city. The city was known for its whitewashed stone buildings, narrow cobblestone streets, and the melodious echoes of philosophical debates that drifted through its air. But fate had its own plans for this settlement, plans that would shatter its tranquility in the most unexpected way. One fateful day, as the sun bathed the city in its warm glow, an eerie hush descended upon the streets. Residents noticed an unusual shadow crawling across the walls, growing larger and darker by the moment. Panic swept through the town as the sky seemed to darken prematurely, leaving the sun's radiance veiled in a suffocating gloom. From above, an ominous cloud of shadows loomed, blotting out the light. The source of the darkness soon became apparent as countless beasts descended upon the city. Spindly legs, glinting fangs, and a chilling intent marked the arrival of a relentless horde of spiders cloaked in dark shadows. As they swarmed the city, their numbers seemed endless, and their movements were synchronized with uncanny precision and inhuman speed. Chaos erupted as the city's inhabitants fled in terror, seeking refuge within their homes or attempting to escape through narrow alleyways. But the spiders were relentless, crawling up walls, invading houses, and filling the once peaceful streets with their malevolent presence. Their chittering and skittering echoed like an eerie symphony of doom. Buildings trembled as webs stretched across streets, squares, and even statues. Ancient architecture was cocooned in a sticky embrace, slowly succumbing to the destructive force of the arachnid onslaught. The once white stones were now adorned with intricate patterns of silk, and the city's beauty was being ensnared in a macabre tapestry woven by the spider's unrelenting advance. The only other color visible was that of blood. The city's defenders, armed with spears and swords, tried to fight valiantly against the Arachnid invaders. But it was all for naught. The battle quickly turned into a desperate struggle for survival, as the inhabitants realized that their city was under siege by an unnatural force that defied comprehension. In the heart of the city, the grand temple dedicated to the gods stood as a symbol of hope and faith. Yet even this sacred sanctuary could not escape the onslaught. The spider's unceasing advance reached its hallowed halls, their webs draping over pillars and altars, rendering the once sanctified space unrecognizable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie twilight over the city, the spider's dark dominion was complete. The once thriving streets lay in ruins, their cobblestones obscured by layers of webbing. The last voice the citizens heard before their untimely demise was "Foremother" or "Foremaster." They did not have time to make sense of this as they had already closed their eyes for the final time. Their bodies were carried away elsewhere, leaving no trace. The only reminder of their existences was the devastated city. The city whose grandeur had been reduced to a haunting state of desolation, a testament to the wrath of the Arachnid horde. The memory of the city's destruction would not be forgotten by time, as the echoes of its tragedy would resonate throughout history, serving as a haunting reminder that even the most peaceful corners of the world could become battlegrounds in the grand tapestry of existence. The city's downfall would weave its way into the annals of time, a small but profound piece in a mosaic of forgotten tales and untold legends. The ruins of the once vibrant city would stand as a grim reminder of the unfathomable power lurking within the shadows of the world, waiting to be unleashed by forces beyond mortal comprehension. This scene was just one of many, as numerous individuals throughout time would meet a similar fate. The lone city in ancient Greece was merely a single chapter in this grim saga. Far away, the bodies of the fallen citizens had been assembled, forming a sprawling mound that stood as a somber proof of the collective tragedy. This mound was just one among many, each representing a different minor city that had been led to ruin. The shadows shrouding the spiders faded, revealing their original white hue. The shadows shrouding them were merely shadow demons. As the cities crumbled and the chaos escalated, fear gave birth to superstition, and whispers of malevolent demons began to spread like wildfire. The shadow demons reveled in the terror they ignited, for it masked their true role in the calamity. These shadow demons, under the command of an unseen master, were agents of chaos and deception. They were weavers of the threads of destiny, manipulating events from the shadows to serve a hidden purpose. They selected their targets with meticulous care, orchestrating tragedies that would reverberate across time. They detected the cities that had to be attacked as well as mislead people into believing this was an attack of demonic beings. If someone investigated, a false chain of clues had been prepared that would eventually lead to the demon Jaldabaoth. Of course all this was false. But it was merely a small piece in a bigger puzzle. One that still had a very long time to be completed. After some time, a time door opened, reminiscent of the one that unleashed the spider scourge upon these hapless cities. Emerging from the rift was a foreboding undead overlord, accompanied by a few elder liches. With calculated precision, the overlord and the elder liches turned their attention to the piles of lifeless bodies. In unison, they raised their bony hands, fingers curling with necromantic energy, and chanted incantations that echoed through the air like a grim dirge. Create middle-tier undead. Summon undead. The bodies, still fresh in their decay, responded to the arcane call. Dark energy surged through the corpses, knitting bone and flesh together once more. Limbs twitched and torsos contorted, reanimated by the dark magic. The magic caster spoke one more. Create low-tier undead. Summon undead. After multiple similar spells were cast, the empty plane was now filled with newly raised undead. The overlord and elder liches immediately turned around upon finishing their work and walked through the time door. In the near future, this desolate and isolated location would house a time sanctuary. The foundation was being meticulously laid to transform it into a worthy place to ultimately host the Supreme Being. Per 34, Temporal Reflections. Aura POV. Undead and golems could be seen moving in orchestrated haste, their watchful endeavors intertwining a meticulously designed mosaic of safeguarding and creation. Golems toiled with unwavering dedication. Middle-tier undead maintained a vigilant patrol over the sanctuary. Meanwhile, the remaining undead actively participated in the sanctuary's construction, contributing their spectral energies to the evolving edifice. Mayor, what do you think we will be doing this time? Aura asked while playing around with the spider babies. She could not communicate with the spider babies directly as she had with her own pet beasts. Her ability to talk with beasts was limited to those she tamed herself. She, of course, would not dare to tame the spider babies as they were Lady White's. I don't know, Nei-chan, Mare replied, stuttering as always. Well, she could not fault Mare this time as she herself had no idea about what was to come. Aura thought back to one of the most delightful times she had in her life until now. Yes, it was obviously accompanying Lady White on this trip. Originally she had thought they would just visit a time sanctuary and then return to Nazarick, but she was quickly proven wrong. Lady White had brought them to travel to multiple time sanctuaries, though the stay in each one was very brief. Sometimes they left the sanctuaries to go outside and got to see Lady White test some super-tier spells. Aura was left in wonder at the might of those spells. Of course, she knew that the spells were merely a drop in the bucket compared to Lady White's true almighty power. After all, she was the most versatile magic caster in all of Yggdrasil. Aura was sure that the rest of the guardians and servants would be very jealous of their journey with Lady White. They were jealous when she had hugged Aura the previous time, not to mention this time when they traveled with her for so long. Especially Albedo. She must be burning with jealousy. Aura had heard rumors that Albedo and Shaltir were making factions in their battle to win Lady White's heart. Having read the Overlord light novels, Aura was certain that these were facts and not mere rumors. Luckily, the alternate version of her and Mare had not caused any major issues in that universe for Lord Momonga. If not, she would not have been so carefree right now. Despite this, Aura understood that due to their age, the Supreme Beings might be reluctant to give more important or dangerous tasks to them. Lord Momonga had only assigned tasks he knew they could easily finish to the alternate versions of themselves. Knowing how caring Lady White was, she probably planned to do the same. This fact made Aura determined to prove the Supreme one of her capabilities and show her that she could handle heavy responsibilities like Demiurge or Albedo. Even Pandora's actor, who was not even a floor guardian, got a very difficult task to finish. While it was true that he had the ability suited for the task and he was also a level 100 NPC, he was not a floor guardian like Aura and Mare were. Aura wanted to show that she was worthy of the title of floor guardian and play an important part in Lady White's multiversal conquest. Ever since they found out that their esteemed creator Bukabukagama had passed away, while heartbroken, Aura and Mare had transferred their feelings to Lady White. This fueled their determination to win her approval. Aura turned towards the seat where the Supreme Being was sitting. A pastry specially prepared from the kitchens of Nazarick was placed on the table in front of her. Her delicate hand took a piece of the pastry as she had her normal calm expression. Aura's gaze shifted toward the seat where the Supreme Being was comfortably settled. Resting upon the table before her was a meticulously crafted pastry, a creation sourced from the esteemed kitchens of Nazarick. With a graceful gesture, her slender fingers delicately selected a portion of the pastry, all the while maintaining her usual air of tranquil composure. I wonder what grand mystery she is trying to decipher. Aura thought. Perhaps the next step in conquering the multiverse. Shiraori POV. This tastes nice. Life is supposed to be like this. I thought, taking a bite of the pastry placed on the table in front of me. Truthfully, I was getting bored of eating food procured in other timelines. Ultimately, Nazarick's food was the best. Yes, you heard me. I have been going to different timelines and tasting food. Well, of course, most of the food I tasted in ancient times did not taste nearly as good as modern food, much less Nazarick's food. Well, I got a bit sidetracked. I also did test super-tier spells in these timelines. One time I even let loose and used a spell in the midst of a war going on. The bodies collected were raised as undead for efficiency, of course. The point is that I basically knew how the efficacy of the spells to a certain degree and I could use them in battles. While it was not certain if certain conditions might cause the spell to act differently yet, this was good enough for now. The eggs, which were to be used as anchors and tools for resurrection, were also hidden away deep within the most protected areas in the sanctuaries which were constructed first. I had to praise Albedo for a job well done upon returning to Nazarick and reward her with something. Perhaps give her something Tabula owned. She was like the other NPCs now anyway and likely would want something that belonged to her creator. Regardless, she really outdid herself. Not that I had any doubts she would not be able to handle this task given that I had read about her in the novels. Based on my observations so far, this multiverse is a blend of Marvel comics with certain MCU elements added to it. For instance, the TVA members we had previously encountered obviously belonged to the TVA of MCU version, not the comics as I had previously said. That said, after traveling and observing events taking place in these timelines clandestinely, I also saw multiple comic book characters that did not exist in the MCU. Though, they were minor characters with slightly more importance than the Flame Men I met earlier. In fact, they outweighed the total number of MCU characters or events I saw, granted I had only visited a handful of timelines. Of course, this might also be because I avoided the modern times where most MCU events take place. The information Mobius provided also specified information on certain comic book events. However, there were certain events I could easily take advantage of due to this. And that was the reason why I was in this timeline. The original plan of visiting just one sanctuary was also changed on a whim because I wanted to win one windfall before going back to Nazarick. Given the concurrent existence of both the comic series and the Marvel Cinematic Universe within this expansive multiverse, it stands to reason that certain artifacts would possess unchanging potency irrespective of their source. To illustrate, consider the instance of the Infinity Stones. In the MCU, the Infinity Stones were notably diminished in comparison to their comic book equivalents. However, since both the MCU and comic continuities coexist, it becomes reasonable to deduce that certain key items such as the Infinity Stones ought to maintain a consistent power threshold regardless of the specific timeline they inhabit. Even if I obtained Infinity Stones from a timeline that corresponded to the MCU version of events, they should hold the same potency as the stones from comics. Of course, this is just a guess for convenience and would make a topic for an exciting study. It could just as easily be totally wrong. Regardless, I plan to obtain the darkhold based on this assumption. Chapter 35, Change of Destiny. If I was lucky, Pandora's actor might gain access to the Book of Vishanti, and that would teach me powerful light/order-based spells. I did not have hopes for this as I did not think that Pandora's actor would become the Sorcerer Supreme. The deficit could be made up by obtaining knowledge from the darkhold. As for it being a book of sins and evil, hell if I care. Of course, I would take some precautions when using it as I did not want to be corrupted by Chthon. Even if it's not possible to use it directly, it can definitely be used for some experiments, right? I don't think I can obtain the one true darkhold from comics which the Scarlet Witch fuses with, but I can try to obtain the one from the MCU. And that's exactly what I am trying to do. Even if my guess is wrong and this version of the darkhold is not as strong as the comic version, the MCU also had quite a few powerful spells to learn. All in all, I don't really lose anything. Agatha Harkness was the one to obtain the darkhold in 2023, after which Wanda had gotten hold of it. Now, I could just go to Wundagore Mountain to read the original carvings that were transcribed into the darkhold, but I did not want to catch an elder god's attention before I was fully prepared. Instead, I'll simply get Agatha Harkness under my command and have her read the darkhold for me and then provide the knowledge. At worst, she can let Wanda become her student like in WandaVision and let her decipher it completely. Then perhaps I can have Wanda as my subordinate as well. Anyway, I will convert the knowledge into something more appropriate for me instead of just using those spells directly. Why did I choose the MCU version? Simply because it's easier to handle this version of Agatha. The comic book version of Agatha Harkness had lived for centuries and even existed from before Atlantis sank. She was already a powerful sorcerer by that point and would go on to learn witchcraft. Controlling an old woman with centuries of experience versus controlling the MCU version, it was clear which was easier. Oh, and also, of course, she was weaker. That made the job easier. Perhaps, I could give Agatha the heresy nullification. I don't know if it will be effective or not, but that can also be used to experiment the extent to which resistance and nullification work. It can show me the upper limit, if you will. In case the darkhold is able to corrupt her despite granting her nullification skills, it just shows that the darkhold is stronger. But if by chance it does not, I will get to know that the resistance and nullification skills are stronger than I originally expected. There is a lot to be tested and gained either way without actually losing anything. In case this attempt fails completely, I can simply use the tempad to try once more. I have arguably all the time in the world as well as the ability to travel in time. The conditions for such a test could not be more in my favor. This time sanctuary is being built in the 17th century. It was currently the period of the Salem witch trials in this particular MCU timeline. And soon enough Agatha's mother would try to kill her for learning dark magic. Forget Cthon, Vishanti, or goddess of witchcraft, I'll become the goddess of magic by mastering all of the magic types. Gotta catch 'em all. Just kidding. Third-person POV. Amid the pinnacle of the Salem witch trials in the year 1693, Agatha Harkness found herself ensnared, forcibly dragged across the forested expanse, and subjected to a trial that culminated in her being securely fastened to a wooden post elevated by a few steps. Agatha's own mother Evanora Harkness was responsible for this. For her who knew nothing about the future, perhaps this was supposed to be her darkest hour. The only light visible was that of the dimly lit torches surrounding the wooden post. Agatha Harkness. Are you a witch? Evanora Harkness asked. Yes. I am a witch. Yet you have betrayed your coven. I have not. You stole knowledge above your age and station. You practice the darkest of magic. I know. I know nothing of these crimes. I swear it. Enough deception. I did not break your rules. They simply bent to my power. Wait. No. I cannot control it. If only you would teach me. Help me. Please. Mother, please. Agatha desperately pleaded. Evanora was not willing to listen anymore as she signaled the other witches to launch multiple energy beams toward her. Agatha immediately closed her eyes expecting pain to inflict her, but the pain never came. Agatha opened her eyes and looked towards the energy beams that had stopped midair. Her mother as well as the witches were frozen as well. It was as if time itself had stopped. No, it was very likely time had stopped. A fissure in space had opened up in front of her when she was not paying attention, and from it came a being who she could not make out at all except it had the color white. Following that being were two children with pointy ears and heterochromatic eyes. But Agatha paid the children no attention as she was focused on the being leading them. The immense amount of power she felt in that being was beyond the confines of her imagination. She was also certain that this existence was responsible for the act of stopping time. Even among the knowledge of magic she had secretly read, such acts were barely mentioned. It seemed like an almost mythical feat. She soon heard the voice suspected to belong to the existence in front of her within her mind. Agatha Harkness, do you wish to change your destiny? Become my subordinate and gain the power to change your fate. And so the gears of destiny started turning once more in an already chaotic multiverse. Chapter 36, A Twist in Time. Agatha Harkness POV. Agatha Harkness, do you wish to change your destiny? Become my subordinate and gain the power to change your fate. Agatha heard the voice suspected to belong to the existence in front of her within her mind. Become her subordinate. Why would such a godlike existence want her as a subordinate? Yes, she truly thought that existence was a god. Well, a goddess. The voice sounded very feminine. To quench her doubts, she asked the existence for clarification. Are you God? I suppose you can think of it that way. She heard the voice again. Why do you wish to have me as your subordinate? As you can see, I have nothing of worth. Agatha said self-deprecatingly. You can just think that it was fate that led me here. You have much to accomplish in the future, that is, if you do not perish here. She had much to accomplish. While it was true that she was very ambitious and hungry for power, Agatha did not think that she had anything that would warrant attention from a goddess. Do you really wish to have a witch who studies dark magic as a subordinate? Agatha was confused by this. Dark magic had led her to this point. The suspected goddess should definitely know about that. What does studying dark magic have to do with you becoming my subordinate? The goddess replied with a question. I want you as a subordinate due to your potential for magic and witchcraft. Nothing more, nothing less. She really did not seem to care about Agatha studying dark magic. As for her potential, Agatha herself wondered if her potential for magic was so high that a goddess came to recruit her. Now, I have yet to hear your answer. Do you wish to become my subordinate and change your fate? Beware that the time to make a choice is running out. After hearing the goddess speak, Agatha made up her mind. There was no other option left. Either she died at the hands of her mother or chose to join the goddess in front of her. She spoke resolutely. I wish to become your subordinate. Shiraori POV. I wish to become your subordinate. I heard Agatha speak and breathed a sigh of relief. I quickly undid her binds with a wave of my hand. I could have just gone and mind-controlled her like I did with Mobius and the TVA members, but I did not want Chthon to somehow influence me through this in case he was able to completely corrupt Agatha. There's no guarantee that something like that won't happen after all. It would be in my best interest to maintain a more contractual give-and-take relationship with her, where we part ways after meeting each other's interests. But ultimately I decided to try and make her my subordinate. I suggested her being a subordinate and affirmed her suspicion of me being a god to gain a low level of loyalty to make any transactions in the future easier. It kind of reminded me of novels where protagonists acted like gods to trick others. I ended up taking inspiration from Klein. It seems I should wrap things up here before the effect of time stop runs out. Oh, before that. Do you want to keep these witches alive? I asked, even if I knew her answer, just in case. No, I would have killed them myself if I had the power. Well, you already have that power and you would have killed them if not for me. Aura, there's no need to keep them alive anymore. We don't need an audience. I signaled her just as the effect of time stop ran out. These witches' bodies could be raised as undead and tested to see if they retained their witchcraft afterwards. Wah, who are thes? Arg. Their voices were cut off immediately by Aura's pet beasts killing the witches. Agatha walked towards her mother's corpse and picked up the brooch she was wearing before turning back towards me. After sending the bodies to Nazarick with a sweep of my hand, and then spoke, "Gate." As the swirling black void opened as I signaled Agatha to follow me. She looked slightly hesitant but ended up following me anyway. On the other side of the gate what appeared was an impromptu lodge that Mare had created earlier. All in all, it was better than a dark and dingy forest where she was going to be killed. As we sat inside the lodge I heard Agatha speak to me. "How exactly am I supposed to refer to you?" "You can call me D. Now that we have been acquainted with each other, let's get down to business. Here is your own future in multiple timelines." I called myself D, as I did not know if there was any magic or abilities that could be used to track me or affect me through my true name. I used hologram creation to show her a simplified and modified version of events. Modified for obvious reasons. To benefit myself, of course. Plus it's not like she can know the true version of events, as she has already deviated from that path. Not to mention that I threw all the timelines into chaos due to my plan of creating time sanctuaries. While it did take some time, I had nothing better to do anyway. I put my hand into my inventory and took out a book titled Agatha Harkness for simplicity and gave it to her as well. It was a book containing a summarized version of events I just showed, which I created using book creation. It also had a few events about the comic book Agatha that were highly edited to be in my favor. Needless to say, she looked shocked after seeing her future of having her powers stripped away by Wanda and being forced to live as the ordinary human Agnes. Fate is not fixed in stone. For every action you take, a different timeline is created. Since you know of these events, your future is already on a different track. Your true potential is much higher than what you saw. Multiple other versions of you become even greater witches. Ultimately, you can also achieve the same and perhaps surpass them. I said. "What exactly do you wish for me to achieve?" She asked, still at a loss of words for what she had just seen. "All I need from you is for you to learn magic and create greater changes to your fate. You are free to do anything you wish and learn whatever magic you wish. You can use the magic you learn to exchange knowledge with me. Remember, the exchange must be equivalent." I again borrowed a page from Mr. Fool's book. I would be the one to determine what was equivalent and what was not. And this would allow me to obtain that knowledge after letting her do the work while disguising myself as an enigmatic god. The reason for all these restrictions is again because I don't want an evil elder god like Chthon to catch wind of me and possess me. I can never be too careful when dealing with these gods, especially if they are as powerful as their comic book selves. In order to make sure that you do not get corrupted by the darkhold, I will also grant you immunity to mind-controlling magics as well as abilities that affect the soul," I said. I opened the administrator skill and added the entry Heresy Nullification next to her name. In case Chthon is able to corrupt her, the Heresy Nullification entry would be automatically removed and I could immediately cut contact with her. "I can't thank you enough for what you have given me," Agatha spoke, slightly unbelieving of the events that had transpired. "If you ever wish to speak to me, you can ask the demon hidden in your shadow to contact me." I had already asked a shadow demon to enter her shadow earlier. Agatha had already known about this. It would be a hassle to contact me across timelines, but preparations had already been made by Albedo for this purpose. Now if you will excuse me, I will take my leave as I have an urgent matter to attend to. Thank you once again, Agatha replied. The reason for this is that I had felt an intruder entering Nazarick, which was in my pocket dimension. I immediately used dimensional magecraft to try and block the intruder from escaping. I had no idea how they were able to enter in the first place, but the intruder had to be decently powerful. Albedo had also contacted me and told me that the intruder had been captured a while back. I turned around and teleported the twin guardians to Nazarick along with me. Chapter 37, Discovery. Amora the Enchantress POV. How is this possible? Amora thought, looking at the approximately 35 feet high world tree in front of her. Due to her extensive knowledge, she understood that the world tree in front of her was juvenile. It had likely been born not long ago. But that was not what surprised her. The reason for her shock and disbelief was due to the very existence of the world tree in front of her. As an Asgardienne, the world tree was a topic she was well versed in. It was likely the same for all Asgardiennes, especially the sorcerers. The world tree Yggdrasil was the reason why the 9 realms even existed, after all. By extension, it was also the reason Asgardiennes existed. Picture the astonishment that rippled through all of Asgard when a few weeks ago, a mysterious phenomenon led to tremors reverberating across the 9 realms, even if only for a brief moment. Well, it was not limited only to Asgard. The dwellers of the other realms also tried to figure out the reason for this phenomenon, as their very livelihoods might depend on it. Mass migrations would be the only choice remaining if something indeed happened to the world tree. In this cold and cruel universe, even the mightiest might fall. This was especially true for hardened warriors, much less regular civilians living in these realms who lacked any power of their own. As the ruler of the 9 realms, Odin took charge of investigating this incident. If someone was responsible for causing this unrest, they had to pay. Ultimately, the investigation reached a dead end and they could not identify the reason for this incident. Plans were made by the Asgardians to consult with the Norns, or as some know them, the Fates. But while Odin and his henchmen were investigating and about to seek out the Norns, they did not know that Amora had a stroke of luck. The Enchantress was the lone individual who had stumbled upon this place and witnessed a second world tree. Amora was also studying the anomaly of the world tree in her everlasting pursuit of power and conquest. Unfortunately, she was expelled from the land of the Norns by Karnilla, the Queen of the Norns. Otherwise, she would have sought out the 3 Norns herself. Regardless, this had allowed her to stumble upon the secret realm that housed the young world tree in front of her while conducting her research on Yggdrasil. The world tree, as mentioned earlier, was very small, reaching a height of barely 35 feet. It did not even have fully formed proper worlds. The 9 leaves of the world tree were in a primordial state that existed long before becoming proper worlds and housing sentient beings. Despite this, it seemed as though the emergence of this world tree had formed some sort of resonance with the Yggdrasil that she knew very well. It was too soon to tell, as she had not studied this tree in depth yet. It could also be that this secret realm or dimension was hidden inside Yggdrasil, but this seemed rather unlikely to her. The bigger possibility was that she had somehow stumbled upon a minor distortion in space created by the resonance and got transported to this realm. This beautiful starlight and the lush forest in this dimension formed a backdrop for the young tree. For the untrained eye, the current juvenile world tree seemed indistinguishable from the vast forest around them, having yet to awaken its mystical nature. But Amora was no ordinary person. She was one of the greatest sorceresses that existed. She would obviously not be fooled by this facade. Amora wished to study the tree more closely. This opportunity could be the ticket to completing all her plans of conquest. She obviously could not simply uproot the tree and cause irreparable damage to it. The best option was to survey the surroundings for threats and then come back after having made sure there was nothing that could disrupt her research. If everything was fine, she might even make this dimension her own personal territory for research as well as future plans. Controlling the world tree would bring her immense power. If she understood everything about it and played her cards right, she could complete her conquests much more easily. Amora was a schemer rather than a brute force fighter, after all. Amora, the queen of all realms. It sure has a nice ring to it. As she thought about her future while grinning, her fantasies were cut short by space magic suddenly blocking any way to leave this dimension. Amora remained composed despite the abrupt shift. As an Asgardian, she held her ground, her lineage inherently tied to the essence of conflict, even if she herself was not a warrior. This was not the first time she faced unknown threats in her life. In fact, it made sense. Someone or something consciously guarding the young world tree was entirely within the realm of possibility. While her previously fantasized easy path to victory might have been cut short, Amora was determined to gain control of this world tree. Not even her own space magic abilities were able to open the distortion in space that brought her here once again, granted it was not her strong suit. With this notion in mind, Amora swiftly turned around and used levitation to glide in a random direction, seeking further hints. A cloak of green energy enveloped her form as she manipulated her magical abilities. She quickly crossed over vast stretches of forest, but she felt as if she had crashed into an invisible barrier at some point. It did not affect her for too long as she put her hand against the barrier and began to inspect what was obstructing her. As incredible as it sounded, the conclusion Amora came to was that this was a wall and not a barrier. The vast stretches of forest and skies clad with stars as far as the eye can see were not real. This wall seemed to mark a boundary for this dimension, and the forests and skies visible further ahead were just artificially made images that just looked exceedingly real. The sorcerer responsible for creating all of this had to be incredibly powerful and talented. Giving out a sigh, Amora turned around and flew in the other direction. At the very least, she had to be aware of how big this realm was and what it held. A magician always had to be prepared, it was one of their core acting rules. But Amora, stumbling onto this dimension, as much as she did not like to say it, was a fluke. She was not as prepared as she normally would have been if she decided to explore such an area. Nonetheless, she had to try her best to get out of here if there was a threat beyond her own abilities. Her gaze landed on a peculiar circular structure in the distance. It had a rather unfamiliar design but bore some similarities to those buildings built by the Olympians and their followers. Amora began surveying this structure after she had quickly sped up and landed in its center. The multiple stands in the surroundings were completely empty. There seemed to be what seemed like a viewing area a bit higher than the rest of the stands. If she had to make a guess, this was some sort of entertainment area. As she was going to start browsing the area, she heard faint footsteps from behind her. What appeared in front of her eyes was a seemingly buxom 14-year-old girl. Seemingly, as she could have been much older than she looked. Amora had to admit that she was a true beauty, with pale shiny skin, seductive crimson-red eyes, and fine facial features. She was dressed in what seemed like a suit of red-colored full-plate armor which looked like it had been drenched in blood. She wore a swan-shaped helmet that left only her pale face exposed. There were also plumes of avian feathers attached from either side of the helmet she wore. Additionally, the chest and shoulders of her armor had been styled into the shape of wings. She also has a crimson skirt-like armor covering her lower body and held a large lance-like weapon in her hand. The girl then spoke in a soft and relaxed voice. "Welcome, Miss Intruder, to the 6th floor of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. It seems like I have something to rub in that little brat's face as well as make up for my other self's mistakes. The original idea was to introduce Deadpool. I had a nice storyline thought out, but the stuff I wrote turned out to be absolute crap. As I said in an earlier comment, I can't get his asshat personality right, and the final product of the chapter 1 wrote was trash. So I simply shoved the original plot aside and thought up a new one that fit the story much better." Chapter 38, Uninvited Guest. Albedo POV. Albedo was going about her duties in the throne room as usual. Occasionally maids entered to clean the throne room in case the supreme being showed up unannounced. It was just another regular day at Nazarick. Standing beside the throne of kings, a position reserved for her, she read reports about the workings of Nazarick, the progress of construction of the time's sanctuaries, and reports from Demiurge amongst other things. While Albedo, Demiurge, and Pandora's actor were said to have similar levels of intelligence, administrative work was her forte without a doubt. While she enjoyed her work and had the zeal to finish it, Albedo sometimes wished she did not have this particular job. The reason was that she could not accompany Lady White for longer periods of time. Albedo was very envious of the twin guardians who got to accompany Lady White on her trip. If it had been her in their place, this trip would have been a long-awaited date. Adding on that she had not seen Lady White in person for so long, Albedo was on the verge of depression. She did not even have the time to visit her room, which she had reconstructed into her personal heaven, to recharge. The only thing keeping her going now was to excel in her tasks and ask for a ring of Ain's old gown as a reward. She also had to display perfect management of Nazarick in Lady White's absence. At least it should have been so, but her plans were thrown down the drains due to an intruder somehow trespassing within Nazarick's grounds. She was informed of this due to Nazarick's defense systems detecting an anomaly. While she was very angry, she had to work hard to control her anger and view the situation objectively to take the best course of action. An ant trespassing on Lady White's sacred grounds without her permission had to be crushed thoroughly. Despite having such a thought, Albedo knew that getting to the bottom of this intrusion was much more important. She had to find out how and why they had infiltrated Nazarick after detaining that worm. Such a security risk had to be fixed immediately, and Demiurge also had to be notified about this. It was primarily his job as the defense commander after all. That said, this was the Marvel multiverse. Albedo had read of the miraculous abilities individuals and other relics possessed. Extreme caution was necessary. She immediately said, "Open master source." As a transparent window opened in front of her, she tried to read information about the intruder. The panel showed: Alert, intruder detected. Alert. View information gathered by defense systems. Yes, no. Albedo immediately clicked yes, without any delay. Number of intruders detected, 1. Current floor, 6th floor of the Great Underground Tomb of Nazarick. Turn on defense systems deactivated due to unknown anomaly, yes, no. To which she obviously clicked yes. She would have to look into this unknown anomaly in detail as well. How had she allowed so many security issues to persist on her watch? View image, yes, no. Upon clicking yes, the image of the intruder was visible to her. An amazingly beautiful woman with blonde hair and green eyes appeared in front of her. She was clad in green robes and also had a green tiara on her head. Albedo immediately recognized her due to having read the comics extensively. This was Amora the Enchantress, a powerful Asgardian sorceress. While she had an extensive range of abilities, she excelled in seduction. Her brute force ability was not high in itself, as she relied more on conspiracies, tricks, and obviously seduction. She lacked the physical strength of warriors like Thor, but it could not be denied that she was a formidable sorceress. She had even cast a curse that affected an entire world in one particular comic, which even the king of Asgard, Odin, had difficulty resolving. Asgard was also one of the forces from whom it was better not to gain attention so soon and lose their advantage of being a hidden force. This issue had to be resolved without further delay, and all information had to be extracted. While she did not want to tell Lady White about Amora's infiltration, both as she had failed in managing Nazarick in her absence as well as the fact that Lady White might rush over quickly and face the intruder herself, Albedo knew she had no choice. So she said, "Message. Albedo. Is this about the intruder?" She heard Lady White's voice. She knew about the intruder. Of course, she would know. Not only was Nazarick in her pocket dimension, but as the only true supreme being, Lady White was known to be omniscient by all of Nazarick's denizens. Even if she might deny it due to her being humble and portraying an approachable attitude towards worthless servants like her, this fact would not change. She was now more worried that Amora had infiltrated after attacking Lady White, so she asked, "My lady, are you okay? Has that intruder attacked you? Are you hurt anywhere?" "Everything is fine, Albedo. I have tightened the defenses around Nazarick using dimensional magecraft and completely blocked any escape routes the intruder might have. Will you be able to deal with it on your own? It will take me a little more time to wrap things up here, but if there are issues, I will be back immediately." Upon hearing everything was fine, Albedo gave out an audible sigh of relief, which was followed by the feeling of her incompetence washing over her. Lady White had already done a major portion of the work and was already doubting her ability to finish the rest of it on her own. Albedo did not think she would get the ring anymore. In fact, that thought was already out of her mind. All she could hope for now was that she did not screw things up further and let her impression in Lady White's mind go down even more. After explaining her thoughts, Lady White cut the message spell and Albedo immediately got to work. The intruder infiltrated the 6th floor directly, meaning it might be possible that she knew of Nazarick's information beforehand and infiltrated only when Aura, Mare, and Lady White left. While the method of infiltration was not yet known, Albedo, Demiurge, Aura and Mare all had a part in this massive error. It was funny that the only ones who did not screw up in the alternate dimension of Overlord screwed up here. Granted, Aura, Mare and Demiurge were not present in Nazarick and had duties to attend, so the greatest fault was Albedo's. After reviewing all of the abilities Amora displayed in the comics within a few seconds, she came up with a plan. She used a message to contact Shaltir, and upon connecting she said, "Shaltir, immediately get equipped and go to the 6th floor. An Asgardian sorceress named Amora had infiltrated by unknown means. She specializes in seduction and mind control magic, which you have an immunity against, but she is well versed in other types of magic as well. Her physical ability is not very strong and she seems inexperienced in close combat. Capture her immediately for further questioning. Lady White will be here after some time and she expects us to solve this issue ourselves." "Very well. I will complete this task at the earliest and wash away my other self-sins. Wait for the good news. Shaltir might seem overconfident, but she had a change of mind and became more careful after reading about Overlord. But Albedo's heart hurt when she heard the words, "wash away my other self-sins." Albedo will not have this opportunity. At the very least she had to clean up after the mess she caused. She immediately used another message spell and contacted Demiurge. "Albedo. Demiurge, return to Nazarick immediately." As Albedo explained the situation to the defense commander, the Asgardian sorceress did not know what the future held for her. Only time will tell. Chapter 39, Shaltir's Bliss. Shaltir POV. "Very well. I will complete this task at the earliest and wash away my other self-sins. Wait for the good news. Shaltir replied in a delighted voice to the tense succubus. She had just finished monitoring the 3 floors she was responsible for about 20 minutes back and was relaxing in her free time. She also did not have any tasks appointed to her by Lady White like Demiurge or Albedo, so all she could do was to try and do her job as floor guardian properly. Shaltir had been very depressed after she read the exploits of her alternate self. Her stupidity and carelessness caused harm to an esteemed supreme being. Luckily, this was the sin of her alternate self, otherwise she might have been driven to commit suicide. Despite this, she was understandably upset. It was very likely that Shaltir could have committed such a blunder in this multiverse as well, and the very thought of that pained her deeply. Out of all the mistakes the denizens of Nazarick committed in the Overlord universe, hers was easily the most serious. To atone, she even asked Lady White to punish her, but the only reply she got from the Supreme One was, "You have not committed any mistakes yet. Just make sure you don't do this again." Hearing this response made Shaltir feel a mix of emotions. She was happy that Lady White had not lost hope in her just yet, but also sad that she could not get rid of this feeling of guilt. Perhaps the guilt would only disappear once she completed an important task successfully. Another emotion she felt was jealousy for her alternate self. Of course, she was not jealous of the sin the alter Shaltir committed. She was jealous that despite committing such a sin, Lord Momonga rewarded her by sitting on her. She also wanted Lady White to do the same to her. She wanted to sink into the throes of pain and passion and experience all her hidden desires towards the Supreme One. Or perhaps, Lady White would like it the other way around and be dominated. Cough. That was off topic, but such thoughts were constantly running through her mind. Shaltir knew that Albedo was also trying to compete with her for Lady White. Both of them had already started forming factions for this grand battle. Naturally, the mistakes of the other Shaltir would cause her to be behind in this race. All the members of Nazarick worshipped the supreme beings, and hearing that a floor guardian was responsible for harming one of them was a surefire way to lose popularity and support. Albedo was also getting more important tasks. While she was worried about lagging behind in this race, Shaltir was presented with a golden opportunity by none other than her greatest competitor. Albedo had somehow allowed for an intruder to enter Nazarick. Shaltir was indeed a bit surprised that Albedo would commit such a mistake. She was well aware of the succubus's capabilities. Due to this foreknowledge, she was even more pleased that Albedo had also committed a mistake. They were on the same starting line now. Albedo would likely have felt so bitter about asking her archrival for help, and this fact would make her victory all the more sweeter. She would catch this intruder quickly and bring her back for questioning. Lady White would definitely be pleased as well. The fact that this sorceress named Amora specialized in mind control-related magical abilities was the cherry on top. The alter Shaltir committed the grave sin of attacking a supreme being due to mind control. There would be no better opportunity than this to wash away her guilt and even win greater merit. She would completely redeem herself. She would be ahead of Albedo in this race. After all, Shaltir herself had not committed any mistakes just yet, while Albedo did. Or at least she hoped things would go down this way. That said, she was not going to be overconfident this time. Screwing things up twice was out of the question. Just because she had immunity to mind control and the Asgardian sorceress was not a powerful warrior, she would not let her guard down. She also could not let her blood frenzy take control and cause the intruder to die. It was best not to see any blood at all. Shaltir had to limit her power just enough so that she could catch the worm that dared to enter the holy sanctum of the supreme beings without their permission without obliterating them. It was a hard task for someone like her, but as she said earlier, she would definitely not waste this opportunity. She quickly put aside her parasol and equipped her armor, a legendary class item. Her face was the only part not obscured by the helmet. She held the Spute Lance, a divine class item given to her by her creator, in her hand. Shaltir wanted to rush to battle immediately using the gate spell which she uses to travel across floors, but Lady White had locked down all of Nazarick with intensive space magic. The only option was to rush there by foot. Leaving her chambers and rushing towards the 6th floor, Shaltir did not have any worries about her floors as she knew that Albedo was keeping a tight watch on Nazarick right now. There were also other floor guardians and area guardians present who had likely been alerted by Albedo. She could go battle freely without concerns. Lady White would be returning to Nazarick soon and Amora had to be caught before her arrival. While Albedo told her about this Amora in the voice transmission, the fact remained that the exact abilities besides mind control and her fighting style were unknown to Shaltir. Lord Momonga had taught her a lesson in the New World, that knowing everything about your enemy and deceiving them was crucial for battle. Unfortunately, she did not have the time to do this preparation. That said, she did know from the briefing that Albedo and Demiurge gave to all of Nazarick that Asgardians were self-proclaimed gods who had to be overthrown to clear up Lady White's path of multiversal conquest and that they were a warrior race. Given her limited information, she could only engage in combat using the methods she was familiar with. She did not believe that this Amora had magical abilities enough to crush her despite her being more careful. Adding on that all of Nazarick was there for backup in case anything went wrong, Shaltir let go of her concerns. Especially so, as the Colosseum came into view. Looking at the blonde-haired woman dressed in green clothes, she said in a soft voice as a declaration. "Welcome, Miss Intruder, to the 6th floor of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. It seems like I have something to rub in that little brat's face as well as make up for my other self's mistakes." It could not be denied that Aura and Mare were also responsible for this incident, though to a very small degree, as they were accompanying Lady White. Albedo held most of the blame. The lack of golems due to Albedo commissioning all of them to the operation of creating time sanctuaries without other defenses in place just highlighted her neglect. With all said and done, it was undeniable that Shaltir was the greatest winner in this whole incident. Chapter 40, Despair. Amora the Enchantress POV. Amora heard the mysterious silver-haired girl speak in an unknown language. Perfect unknowable, life essence, mana essence, resist break. Luckily, the Asgardian ability of Allspeak allowed her to understand some parts of what she was saying. Earlier the girl called her an intruder and welcomed her to the 6th floor of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. Obviously, this realm was known as Nazarick, and this girl might be a warrior protecting the world tree. Well, this was not entirely out of her expectations as she had expected someone to be protecting the world tree. The bigger issue was fighting this girl. Yes, she was all but certain the girl wanted to capture or kill her. Not surprising, as any sane dweller of any realm would try to defeat intruders. Asgard was the same. Had someone invaded Asgard, they would face the same treatment and be killed without mercy. Though that might change soon as Odin was becoming softer compared to his warmongering days, but she digressed. While Amora could understand the first few sentences the girl spoke, she could not decipher what, perfect unknowable, and the words following that meant. It was almost as if someone had obscured the words to make it sound like nonsense, similar to the silent casting of magic she had observed in some other places. In her opinion, this was some unknown form of magic. Not only was the sorcery used by the girl different from anything she had known, but even the very magical energies dwelling in her body were different from what Amora had known until now. Yet, in this unfamiliar dimension, the varying nature of magical energies provided an intriguing avenue for Amora's magical research. However, the real challenge lay in the fact that she currently resided outside the realm of Asgard. Her spells drew their strength from Asgardian sources and were at their zenith within its bounds. Conversely, here, in this foreign realm, her powers waned. This, combined with the absence of allies skilled in close combat, placed Amora at a severe disadvantage. Amora suspected the girl was a vampire, noting similarities to her prior research on a vampire lineage. Amora acknowledged that she had limited knowledge of vampires but knew that miracles happened often and nothing was ever truly set in stone. Amora summoned her mystical energy and hurled bolts of energy at the girl, attempting to strike her down with her formidable magic. However, the vampire's supernatural agility allowed her to effortlessly evade the magical onslaught. The enchantress realized that this would be no ordinary battle. Amora attempted to use her seductive magic. She cast a spell, attempting to ensnare the vampire's mind and make her vulnerable. But this had no visible effect. She also likely had immunity to mind control, which Amora specialized in, as all her attempts to control her failed. Era, it seems you have already realized that mind control does not work on me. Too bad for you, as it seemed quite powerful. But enough chatting. I am on a time crunch. Before she had time to completely digest what the girl said, she disappeared from her previous position. Luckily, speed was one of the factors that Amora had in spades. She was able to dodge Shaltir's attack by a hair. The location where she was standing earlier was shattered by the impact of the girl's attack and dust swirled in the air. Amora could tell based on her experience that the girl was holding back from killing her for some reason. Possibly, she just wanted to apprehend her. In case she was defeated and caught, this gave her more room to work around. Perhaps this vampire was a subordinate working for someone else who ordered this girl to capture Amora instead of killing her. As Amora continued her onslaught of magical attacks without letting her opponent catch a breath, Shaltir's natural immunities came into play. Spells that should have paralyzed or charmed her had no effect. She was seemingly immune to mind-affecting magic, poison, and paralysis. Perhaps if she had access to Asgard's source of magic, the effect might be more pronounced, but for now, all her attacks were meaningless. Amora's frustration grew as she realized that the vampire was a nearly invulnerable opponent for someone with her abilities. The girl's resistance to magic attacks seemed very powerful. It was as if she was built to counter sorcerers. The girl once again turned towards her and punched, but Amora was prepared this time. She quickly cast an energy shield blocking the punch. This energy shield was capable of blocking attacks from Thor, but to her dismay once again, they were broken effortlessly. While it was true that her energy shield was significantly weaker than in Asgard, where it could block Thor's planet-shaking attacks, the mental blow of having her proud magic crushed was too much for her. Amora decided that this could not continue. She had to use powerful curse magic to indirectly contain or defeat the girl if she could not use mind control or space magic. Since the girl was desperately trying not to kill her, perhaps driving out her innate vampiric instinct for blood might give her the opening she needed to try and escape while the vampire was losing her sanity. Amora quickly chanted, "Let thy thirst know no end, let thy seek what can't be sated, thy desires to rend." Her still vast magical energies depleted a little after the successful casting of the spell. Amora was confident the spell would work, as even someone like Odin would have trouble dispelling her curse magic. Her curses were so fearsome if cast in Asgard that Odin would rather not deal with it. This was a curse that would amplify the target's thirst for blood, making it insatiable and unrelenting. The target's hunger would consume their thoughts, distracting them from battle and driving them to relentlessly seek blood to the point of obsession. If used on someone like a human, it would cause them to endlessly thirst for water instead. The curse heightens the vulnerability of the target to distractions, leaving her more open to attacks from enemies. She had given it a simple name called the Curse of Unquenchable Thirst. While she thought her strategy would progress as planned, the girl's voice broke her hopes. "Too bad, I am an undead. Curses have no effect on me. Now, Vermilion Nova. Any injuries you have can be healed anyway. It's fine as long as you are alive. The girl seemed to have decided it was time to end the battle after having shown her absolute superiority in this battle. She chanted an incantation and summoned her own powerful magic, summoning pillars of flame that engulfed Amora. The enchantress tried to shield herself by creating multiple barriers to block the attack, but the flames scorched her. The flames enveloped Amora, forcing her to shield her eyes. Pain assaulted every fiber of Amora's being. Yet, despite the intensity of the attack, Amora's Asgardian durability allowed her to withstand it, if only barely. Her regenerative abilities were overworked to try and heal the damage caused. Without these Asgardian traits, she would likely have perished. The girl's relentless attacks became even more ferocious, not letting Amora get back on her feet. She struck Amora with a series of devastating blows, shattering the magical barriers that Amora barely conjured one by one. A final punch knocked her into the wall of the structure as Amora lay on the floor covered in blood. Yet, the last embers of her fighting spirit were not yet extinguished. With precision born of desperation, she cast a spell that had always been her last resort, time disruption. The fabric of reality seemed to ripple, accompanied by green magical radiance as Amora harnessed the spell's subtle power. Time itself shifted and twisted around her, creating a localized disruption. The injuries she had suffered were reversed, erased from existence as if they had never occurred. A surge of vitality flooded through her. But the use of such a potent spell exacted a heavy toll. As Amora's magical energy drained away, her strength waned. The battlefield blurred as she struggled to maintain her focus. Even if her physical injuries were cured, she was not in a mental state to continue fighting for long. She gazed at Shaltir, her eyes burning with a mixture of determination and exhaustion. With the last vestiges of her magical power, Amora cast one final spell, a spell born from desperation and the refusal to be defeated. Astral Cataclysm. A burst of energy erupted from Amora's outstretched hand, hurtling towards the vampire girl. The shockwave of the blast expanded outward, engulfing the battlefield in blinding light. Amora's body trembled as the last traces of her magical energy were consumed by the once cataclysmic spell in Asgardian sorcery. Now she just hoped what little magic she had used for this spell was enough to damage the vampire. The light gradually faded, leaving behind a battlefield transformed by the aftermath of their clash. Amora was about to breathe a sigh of relief as she could not detect the girl, but her happiness was short-lived, as she heard the voice of the vampire girl once more. "Ha ha ha, that tickled a little bit. Perhaps if you were in Asgard, your magic could have harmed me. You might have even fought me for multiple more hours and used more powerful spells if what little I know about Asgardian sorcerers is correct. But too bad you are not, and I am basically a living counter to all your magic. Now, lie down quietly, and don't throw more tantrums. We have to go back quickly." As Amora watched the figure wearing red armor emerge from the clouds of dust, she closed her eyes, having given it her all in battle.